And I said, welcome to the hood. Welcome to the hood. Welcome to the place where nothing ever ends up good. And they say that you're a disgrace if you can't find yourself a job. Around here, there's either been a drought or then there's been a flood. No one ever built an ark for anybody from the block. Man, are trying to ring the heavens, but God never gets in touch. For certain people, it's a must to come across as tough, cause you don't want to be a victim when Beretta start to bust. So I say, welcome to the hood. Welcome to the hood when no one teaches you to love, because we're all products of lust. We learn to tell a lie before we even learn to trust, and then we see our people die as if the sorrow ain't enough. So-and-so killed so-and-so, I struggle to keep up. A victim of knife crime, they hit him in the lung. The press are making articles expressing their disgust, but where there's no opportunity, survival is a must. So I say, welcome to the hood. Welcome to the hood, where boredom leads to depression, depression leads to drugs, and drugs numb the pain of all the fucked up stuff that you have to see when you're forced into growing up. Nobody's responsible, everybody's corrupt, and school's a waste of time cause we're learning our books. And when you're academic, you get taken for a muck, and mathematics won't help when you're in a puddle of blood. So I say, welcome to the hood. Welcome to the hood. It's like the only thing that ever sells is the dust. We try and keep it clean, but the stress builds up, and it was all a dream until Biggie got shot.
Welcome to the place that I call home. Be careful, it don't turn your heart to stone. Welcome to the war I'm battling. You live or you die, you lose or you win.
And I say, welcome to the hood. Welcome to the hood. The person they call mental health is the person that we call mom. We either don't have it, that, or we have more than one, and we're told to fly the nest before we even learn to run. You don't have to be a soldier here to hold a gun, and watching other people suffer is what we consider fun. Now suffering is standard, you'll have to toughen up. At least that's what your mother tells you when she's fully drunk. People steal for a living and end up in the can. It's miles easier in jail, but you won't understand. Being a criminal was not part of the plan, but how are you supposed to work when nobody will take you on? So I say, welcome to the hood. Welcome to the hood. Depression and anxiety get swept under the rug. There's gangsters in your family. Welcome to the club, because there's plenty of gangsters in a city full of thugs. Being born into the politics of poverty is rough. You can look down your nose holes, but only God can judge. Most of us are afraid to pray to the above, cause Pac said there ain't no heaven for a fuck. So welcome to the hood. Welcome to the hood. Welcome to the place where nothing ever ends up good, and they say that you're a disgrace if you can't find yourself a job. But round here there's either been a drought or then there's been a flood.
Welcome to the place that I call home. Be careful, it don't turn your heart to stone. Welcome to the war I'm battling. You live or you die, you lose or you win. They say there ain't no heaven for a thug. Feels like my good ain't ever good enough. Seems like I'm running out of love. You live or you die, you lose or you win. They say there ain't no heaven for a thug. Seems like my good ain't ever good enough. Feels like I'm running out of love. You live or you die, you lose or you win. Welcome to the place that I call home. Be careful, it don't turn your heart to stone. Welcome to the war I'm battling. You live or you die, you lose or you win.
Yo, what is going on, everyone? How's everyone doing today? Welcome on this Tuesday evening. How's everyone going? It's well, we've had the sunshine last week, and now it seems to be the rain. I know where I am, at least it's raining right now. I know in other parts of the UK there's been thunderstorms. There's been a lot of things. I've not had that privilege, if you want to call it a privilege, but it's been pretty all right. It's not been too bad. It's just been raining. It's got that humid feel where it's like, it's still warm. So still got the windows open, but it's still raining. So hope everyone is doing well. Can you let me know whether you can hear me in the chat, everyone? I can see a few people here already. So let me just say what's up to everyone in the chat. Vincent, how's it going? Skittles Man Reloaded. Yeah, no. Ditto. This is not going to be a long one whatsoever to be fair to, thanks for coming up, because it's kind of an impromptu one, really. I've been doing some work that's been just annoying the crap out of me. And to be fair, I should still be doing it, but I've hit a bit of a roadblock. I don't know if anyone's ever had that before. I'm pretty sure most people had when they're doing their work, they've had roadblocks, and it's like, ugh. So, yeah. And with that, I've been doing some thinking with some of the live streams I've been doing and the videos that I've been doing over the last sort of few days, and some of the other content that I've seen, and hence the title of this video, because one of the things that that attracts a lot of people to certain spaces, or let's be honest, all people to certain spaces, is not just that it's an echo chamber. I think a lot of people get confused when they say, you know what, people only want to get into an echo chamber. I do agree that there is a huge part of that. But in some spaces, it's a lot more than that. It's not just about being with people who they agree with, but a lot of times it's because, especially nowadays, I would say, people are looking for guidance. People are looking for mentorship. People are looking for not just leaders in a sense where someone's standing out from the crowd, but people are looking for people to guide them through their lives. And that's what led me to do the stream. And that's what led me to sort of come back and just be a little bit more fair and balanced. It's just going to be a chilled out stream today. I'm hoping it's not going to be too long, depending on how much interaction, if you guys want to come up or not. But I just really wanted to sort of get my thoughts out on this sort of topic, because one of the things which, again, if we go to, the red pill space, that I've realized that people are looking for is people say, oh, they're looking for father figures. That's kind of an easy way out in my mind. People will say it's because they've not got, fathers in life or even a father figure. But I think it's more than that. I think it's people are looking for real guidance, sober guidance, things which sometimes, I'll be honest with you, depending on which family you brought in, depending which geographical region you've been born in, what year you're born in, a lot of people don't actually have advice. I want to meet advice, and this is what I want to get into right now. Sober advice. Because one of the things which I will say is that you could be brought up in a situation where you have, two parents in the home. Let's just take what is known as the standard, what's known as what people should be having. But that doesn't mean that those two parents in your household are sober. I mean, in the actual sense of, you could be alcoholics, but it also doesn't mean that they can actually provide you with a good footing in terms of maybe financial advice or finances, but just advice in general, full stop, in which people can actually utilize that and actually guide their lives. And that's what I see when people enter these spaces. And it's on both sides. Men and women are looking, it seems, in my humble opinion, in my observation, men and women are looking for people to actually guide them. And this is what I think a lot of people, I know a lot of people are missing in terms of guidance. And this is kind of that forms part of the live stream in terms of the title. And what I want to ask everyone as well is that, do you have in your life mentors? Do you have in your life, we used to call them like counselors sometimes back in the day. I think that's still a thing, to be fair. But do you have people who you can actually guide you through situations, who can actually guide you through the life, particularly when you get into the workforce? Because there's one thing when you're young and you're going through the educational situation, because pretty much everyone's at the same, I lie, people seem to be at the same page. But even that, I'm going to get into why that's not the case. But when you get into the workforce, and this is what I've kind of realized myself, particularly in my 20s, and this is, if anything, I'm just going to put kind of my wrongs, if you want to call it knowledge, that I lacked, is some sort of career mentor, some sort of person who I can say, this is where I want to get to. Who is there? Who, let's be honest, this is another thing what happens when it comes to this. If you're going to the Black community now, I've never been talking in general, but when it comes to us as Black people, who is it that you guys look up to in if you are working or in that life or whatever have you? Who do you guys go to ask for that kind of advice to get to a position where you want to get to in life? Do you have that in your life? Do you have that person who you can actually physically reach? Because there's one thing which gets just plastered to the Black community, or all community, but to the Black community at a lot, is what we like to call celebrity role models. So whenever we hear role models, whenever Black people hear role models and who do you aspire to be, it's always a celebrity. It's always somebody who, let's be honest, the average person cannot touch or feel. I know they have Instagram, I know they have Twitter and social media, I get all that, but that's not the same thing, one iota. You cannot, on pretty much a day-to-day basis, go to any of these people and say, what do I need to do in this situation here? How do I get to this situation here? How do I get that? And this is what, again, this is why a lot of these, spaces that we see pop up, this is why a lot of these people go to these kind of places, because a lot of these people, they market themselves as life coaches. And think about that, life coach. That's not something to play with, which is why sometimes people always ask, oh, why are you so critical about this? Why are you so critical about that? There's a reason why, because in this day and age, we have so much information out there, but with so much information out there and so many people out there, we also have, guess what? So much misinformation out there. We have so many people who do not mean you well. So many people who do not steer you in the right way. Now, we could argue about intentions. That's true. Did they intend to lead you in the wrong way? Sometimes I'm going to say no, but a lot of times, particularly nowadays, when I'm seeing these things, I'm like, yes. A lot of people, they're only out for themselves. And a lot of people really do not have your best interest. This is why one of the criticisms I have about certain spaces, and this is for both men and women, because I see it on both sides when you go to women's spaces, and some of the advice I hear, some of the things which I listen from these quote unquote content creators, but even more so, they call themselves influencers. Now think about that. They market themselves as influencers. And this is why I'm going to say this, and this goes for me too as well, because I'm talking about advice, I'm talking about this and all this kind of other stuff. I always said this, I made a video about this, so this is nothing new, and I mean it. This goes for me as well. Never in your life trust an influencer, if anything. Never trust them. Because a lot of these influencers, you think they mean well, but truth be told, that is their business. They need you to sell whatever product that they're selling. A lot of times they will, let's be honest, sell themselves out, sell their space out, sell their whole well-being out just to get the extra bit of subscribers, the extra bit of AdSense, the extra bit of super chat, just for people to buy their course, which, let's be honest, it ain't anything. But these influencers, a lot of them, not all, because I've got to be fair and balanced, but a lot of them, that's what they do. That's who they are, because guess what? This space is just a business. This space is about, a lot of times, just entertainment. So this is why the stream is about, do you have anyone in your life who you can call, I don't know, a mentor, someone in your life who, let's be honest, you're probably not paying for, they give you advice for free, and someone who you can actually look up to and actually take advice from, whether it be about career advice, financial advice, and of course, dating and relationship advice. Do you have any of that in your life? Do you have any of that in your at least clear vicinity? Because the one thing, again, about this space that we have online is, while it feels as if we can reach out to other people, the one thing you cannot do, and there's a reason why I always say don't trust the influencers, is that you cannot check their life. There's a reason why certain types of influencers, their past life is under scrutiny, because yeah, I'm just looking at the chat that K do. Listen, it's bigger than that. Look, it's bigger than that. It's about everyone. It's about the whole space. And this is why when I made that video, never trust the influencer, I didn't name any names, because this could apply to so many people. And even people right now who people look up to, I guarantee down the line, you're going to think, oh, wow. But sometimes because of how people really, I don't know what it is about nowadays, but people would rather glean to a person just because they pander to them, even though their lifestyle doesn't match up to what they preach. Derek Jackson, yep, that is a classic example. Women flocked to this guy, even though his lifestyle was completely up. Basically, he was preaching about himself. But you know what? People still, at the end of the day, once it's all settled down, if you go back to his channel, people still, guess what they do? They still go back to him because the message to them, it resonates. And that's fine. I understand that. But that's why I always say to myself, always when it comes to influencers, including myself, take everything with a pinch of salt, because we have our own agendas. We have our own agendas. Do not get it wrong. I have my agenda. You don't think I'm looking at my channel how to grow it. You don't think other people look at their channel how to grow it. A lot of people, once they get to, again, a certain level, we use the word sellout. That's what we use, don't we? When people get to a certain level, we use, oh, they're selling out and all this kind of other stuff. But why do you think they do that? Because they see the financial potential, they see the angle, and a lot of times the integrity gets eroded away. And I don't know if they mean it that way. I don't know if that's how they intended their sort of their route to go down, their path to go down. But eventually they go down it, and it gets such as almost a steamroll that they're a completely different person than when they left off at. But then again, who's the person who gets the collateral damage? Who's the person who listens to that person taking all the wrong advice? The people. You are. And when it comes to this red pill space, bringing it back to the red pill space, because obviously that's where a lot of my subscribers frequent, that's a lot of people go into now. It's one of the most talked about scenes at the moment. one of the things that you're not hearing about, which I've been listening to, is just the impact that it has on, let's be honest, their advice on your life. I've seen content creators who's gone through divorce, separation, and there's no secret as to the reason why. Because a lot of the advice is not sober advice. A lot of the things, the guidance that they want, the mentors that they're looking for in this space, truth be told, they're steering them down a path which ain't even right. So the question I've always want to ask the people, what I wanted to bring today, and just in regards to how you're leading your life, is do you have who do you have as your sort of guidance factor? Who do you have as your mentors, your leaders? Because again, and I'm going to share my screen in a second and show you this, because when we looked at what the UK deems as the power list, so this is the power list as the most influential list of people ever, and there's a clear trend here in regards to not all, but a lot of the people who are considered to be on that power list. And this is why I'm like, well, let me share my screen right now just so that you can see exactly what I'm talking about, because this is where, for us as people, it's not their fault. It's not their fault, because celebrities are more high profile. Celebrities are there in the media. Whatever they do, whatever they tweet, it's going to get the most retweets and the most shares. But if you look at the power list in 2020, this was, I don't know exactly when it was done, early this year, but this was done in regards to the 10 most powerful or influential people in the UK of, African, American, African, Caribbean heritage in the UK. Now, the number one on the list is Lewis Hamilton. Now, Lewis Hamilton, the reason why I think he's on that list is because most of it is because he's a celebrity. He's the most successful Formula One driver, if anyone actually follows Formula One. And of course, most of these people on this list, if you go through them, all of them have some sort of influence in terms of particularly the climate that's been going on, Black Lives Matter. So a lot of it is all about that whole, let's be honest, woke virtue signaling agenda. So as long as you can be some sort of virtue signaler, you're pretty much banked to be on this list. So most of these people, if you look at this website, you look at this list, you look at what they've been doing, it's all based on, in the aftermath of Black Lives Matter protests, all of it's based on that kind of stuff. There are a few notable exceptions, but a lot of it is that kind of ill, which again, I'm not even going to speak ill of it at all. I'm not going to speak ill of it. That it is what it is. But it just shows you exactly the kind of people who get pushed down, celebrities, and whether or not you agree with what these guys say. I know some of them are controversial for some people and not controversial for other people, but one of the things which I've realized, which kind of gets me with a lot of these people who we get pushed off, is that these are people who, let's be honest, they aren't people who you can grab. They aren't people who you can really have a conversation about how to get there. These aren't the people who I would say are people who we should be not necessarily not looking up to, because there's always people like that who you just generally will look up to, because it is what it is. If you want to get into that arena, you're going to have someone who's a Formula One driver. You're going to like that. You're going to like someone like Lewis Hamilton. If you wanted to get into, what do we call it, journalism, you're going to look at someone like Afil Hirsch, David Olasaga. You're going to look at that. That is just general. That is just how it is. But on a day-to-day basis, this is kind of the key. This is what separates a lot of people. And this is how a lot of people get to certain places where, let's be honest, in this world, a lot of it is not what you know, it's who you know. And this is the whole point of, do you have people in your life to get you where you need to get to? Because I'll be honest, there are people who I've just encountered and come across who seem to just fly in life. They're just flying life. And a lot of times you think of, how the hell did you get there? Or how the hell did you do this? And a lot of times it's because, I'm going to be honest with you, one of the first things, got to keep it real, particularly over here in the UK, they are born in a generous situation. I'm going to say that again. They are born in a generous situation. So you cannot control where you're born, who your family are. You can't control any of that stuff. You are born by the grace of God in whatever year, decade, century, whatever time frame, whatever language you're speaking. You are just by the courtesy of your birth. But unfortunately, that's where we don't have a level playing field, because at the end of the day, some people are born in families who can do a hell of a lot more than other families can do, just by the sheer courtesy of who their parents are or who they're connected with. So that's one of the things which will always be a factor in your life, which you cannot, no one can dispute this. I mean, there's certain people who I've come across who, because their parents are well connected, because they have family members who are well connected, they just fly in life. They're just like, listen, you may be in the same university there for a short period of time. You may be in the same sort of role for the same period of time, but don't get it confused. You are not in the exact same wavelength, because they have access to contacts, not only could guide them, but who can actually lead them into another situation, another direction. I'm like, I didn't even think was possible. They can fast track them. They can get to certain places. So sometimes you'll think of how in God's earth have they been able to do this? Well, unfortunately, a lot of times it's because they've been privileged. And it is true. It is true. It's not their fault. It's not their fault. They've been privileged in a situation where they've been able to get that kind of knowledge, understanding. They've got that family. And let's be honest, not only have they got connections, they've got finances. And this is another thing what kills you, because certain people can do certain things and they can go to bank of mum and dad. I mean, I'm pretty sure people have heard this in their life. I have, when it comes to like buying a house, for example. You know, sometimes some people, they just really don't know. They're just clueless. They're just clueless. They're like, why don't you go ask your parents for a deposit? Why? Because that's what the main ways how people say to buy a house now is, guess what? Still rely on your bank of mum and dad. Now I'm like this, listen, I don't know about you guys, but for me, there's no way near in hell I could have relied on that. Listen, and I'm not going to go into too much detail because I don't like to revolve too much in my private life, but my mum would come to me for finances. That's how it was. There was none of this kind of stuff about, you know what I mean? Oh yeah, let me go to my mum and ask. No. I knew what time it was. She would be asking me for finances more than the other way around. Same with some of the family members. They'll be asking me for finances more than the other way around. So just understand that situation where some people, again, they just look out. They're just born in a situation where they have the contacts because they may be middle class, they're upper class. They hang around these sort of highfalutin, powerful people in certain societies, which the regular average person, not only do they have no idea, they have no conceptual idea in their mindset that this even exists. And because of that, guess what? They are locked out. They're excluded. They cannot have the situations that other people have. And again, all of this is courtesy of, guess what? Where they were born and who they were born from. Again, it's nothing that you can control. It's nothing that you can control. But that is the kind of things where you have to deal with, or you're kind of faced with, or I've been faced with, or people are faced with all the time. Even when it comes to, I mean, we talk about the black thing, but even, let's be honest, it's not like we don't have a black bourgeoisie. Quietly as it's kept. I mean, I've been sent some videos beforehand where you have these rich, highfalutin black people and all this kind of other stuff. But that's the problem when it comes to us. And we had various conversations about this, about, you know, black billionaires and this kind of stuff. Now, there may not be a huge contingent of like black British billionaires. They may be imported, but there is kind of a bourgeoisie. There is kind of a separation here, what gets, you know, quietly kept. And this is one of the things which also is one of the reasons why a lot of us as people, we glean to these spaces. We look for a lot of these, we call them, I say influencers, but role models, or people who can guide us and dictate to us. Because a lot of these people aren't just looking for general advice. They're looking for day-to-day advice, how to move the next way, how to, when it comes to dating and relationship advice. I see people who give out, you know, almost a bullet point on how do I do this, because people are looking for advice. And not only that, from people who have done it the right way. And this is why I always say, don't trust an influencer, because a lot of these people, when it comes to certain advice, you need to know their life. You need to know their life story, not everything, but there's certain things that you need to know. I don't know how people can trust somebody preaching about monogamous relationship from a serial cheater. How does that work? How does somebody preach marriage to somebody who's not married? How does that work? How do someone preach how to do this when they're not that themselves? I understand you can give your 2 cents, your advice, your 2 pence. I get it. Everyone is free to give their opinions. But sometimes I'm like, how do people just market themselves as this, market themselves as that, and take people's money by doing it? I'm like, I don't know how people do it. I mean, knock on wood, I pray to God I don't get to a stage where I just become almost a hypocrite, almost a liar, fake it till you make it. And then once I've made it, I'm like, yep, the end is justifying the means. But I don't know. It is what it is. But going back to this, though, that's people are born in certain situations that you cannot control. And again, they have situations, they have guidance, they have counselors, they have things that they have available to them that other people do not have. Again, it's not their fault. It's not your fault. It just is what it is. And this is where, when it comes to those types of people, there's another thing I've realized, because we talked about, you know, there's a small set of there's a black bourgeoisie that's hidden and quiet. And this is what I've realized with a lot of educated or people who are successful in the black community. I don't know if this is what I've been clocking onto, and people have said this. I'm not the first one to say it. People have been saying this. It's that when people have made it, when black folk have made it, when we've made it, when we've gotten out of our situation, if we've done, or whether we're born in a situation, a lot of times we actually look down upon people who are in a certain situation to the point where we will turn our back on ourselves. So the stereotype has always been, when you made it, you get on, you have your trophy wife, and obviously fill in the blank trophy, non-black wife. You're living in your nice area. You're living with your nice people. You know, you've moved up. You moved on in life. You've gotten a new friendship group. You've gotten a new circle. You've been invited to a place that you've never been before, where you don't see people who look like you. And do you know what happens? Not only does that knowledge go, but a lot of times they look down upon people who are in a situation that they could have been at, or a situation that they don't like. So what happens is, guess what? What was known as, because W. Du Bois coined this as the talented 10th, because he had a theory. This was in the US back in, oh gosh, I want to say in the early 20th century. Check it out. W. Du Bois suggested that in order for the black community in the US to rise, it would be the top 10%, the most brilliant, the most educated, the talented 10th is what it was called. Those were the people who were supposed to drag the 90% out of poverty, out of obscurity, basically bring the rest of the group with them. So this is why when you hear a lot of stuff, particularly over there, about why, you know, they glean onto people who are talented, why they glean onto people who are successful. That's why we measure it. Let's be honest. Finances, wealth, finances. We judge people of that. And what a lot of the black community do is that they rely on it, because it's been institutionalized, you could argue, in regards to these are the people who we should be relying on to pull us out of where we are. That's why I have that mentality of, these people should give back. But what happens is with the talented 10th is a lot of them have that, some of them, they have that resentment. A lot of them do. They have that narcissism. They have that unbridled arrogance about them, because a lot of times they reject it. You know, they come from a situation like, I don't want to do this. I shouldn't be responsible for this. I didn't F up the community. I didn't F up this. And here's the thing. Why they're right. By the same token, we didn't F up the community. We were born in a situation that we couldn't control. Like, we were born in a situation to our parents that we couldn't control. But what happens a lot of times, and this is where we miss out on, is the people who should be helping us, or I say should be helping us. Let me rephrase that, because there's no should, but the people who can, and the people who can offer advice, guidance, counseling, who can actually be a powerful presence for at least a few people. What happens is that they have resentment, arrogance, they have a condescension, and they hate everything almost. And you could argue they even hate their own skin color, but that's a completely different situation. But it comes to a situation where they completely leave, and all that talent, all that wealth, all that finances, it goes. That's why I understand why, again, I don't want to bring into this IR data. I don't want to bring it into it, but that's why you can understand why women get upset, black women get upset in particular when it happens. Because let's be honest, even to today, I know women are working, but the main way how women are actually do get their wealth is by, let's be honest, partnering up with a man. That is the main way. I know, it is what it is, but that's one of the main focus. That's how wealth is transmitted in the community. Families, and families usually means, I know in this modern day sense it's all up in the air, but it usually means marriages. It means partnerships, or I say it requires a man and a woman. That's just kind of is, and that's what's missing. That's what happens, and that's why our community, what happens is the best of us. You know this in the UK. You look at our politicians, you look at our footballers, you look at our athletes, the best and brightest of us. You could argue if they're bright, but the best of us. What happens? They leave. They leave us. They look behind. Some of them will talk about this, but let's be honest. And this is where I don't want to criticize Lewis Hamilton, but this is why sometimes I don't take him too seriously, because when he talks about us in the black community, when it only suits him when it comes to, let's be honest, hot button topics. Because before this BLM kicked off, Lewis Hamilton, he's been in the game Formula 1 for over since 2007, since he joined Formula 1. I'm like this. He's telling me it took him until last year, or even this year, sorry, to set up a commission to get other black people into Formula 1, knowing that he was tagged as the first black Formula 1 driver. That's what he was tagged as when he first came into the scene. And again, I'm not saying he has to, but a lot of times when it comes to black people, when it comes to this, it's all for show. All for, let's be honest, because it hit headlines. It's all just for facade, because a lot of them are arrogant. A lot of them are just stuck up. And let's be honest, a lot of them is going to go about their own daily lives, swanning around in Monaco, swanning around the world, do what they want to do. And again, they're entitled to. They're free to do that. This is the thing. I can't criticize too much because they're free to do that. I'm pretty sure everyone would do that if they have the finances, the luxury, the time. Everyone would do that. Who wouldn't? Who wouldn't be swanning around in some of these places, going all the way across the world? Who wouldn't do this? You know what I mean? Who wouldn't do this? So I can't be too critical. I just got to be fair and balanced. But this is where the criticism comes into place, because again, what happens? He's a person who could have, for his own cash, for his own money, could set up a commission, which I guarantee is something which He's probably not finance. He's got someone else to finance it, but his name's attached there. Oh, his name's on it. It's the Lewis Hamilton Commission. It's his this, it's his that. And it's like, it looks good because they want to be out in front as the leader, don't they? That's the thing. And that's why I didn't title this video leaders. It's more mentors, guidance, because it's a different than a leader. A mentor and someone who guides you is not the same as a leader. But this is what black people want to be. They want to be a leader. They want to be out in front. They want to be someone who, oh, I'm going to be looked at as the, let's be honest, the savior. We have a bit of a savior complex where most black people, they just want to be a savior. They want to be that person to be the name out there to say, yes, I did this for my legacy because it looks good. It looks good. Let's be honest. It looks good on this. But that's not where it is. That's not what it is. What my criticism, a lot of people is, with your wealth, your contacts, your ability, why have you not done anything until this time? You're telling me that you didn't see the inequality of other people who look like you in the industry that you're in. Come on now, don't tell that lie. I guarantee you knew you were different the moment you stepped in there, and I guarantee you knew you were different all the way through your history. Again, no shade, no harm, not shading at all. This is just my analysis. It baffles the mind sometimes when I hear certain people talk about these things, and I think to myself, well, where have you been for the last 10 years since you've been on the scene? Since you've been making all your millions and millions of pounds every year? Where have you been? And a lot of it is tax-free. Not all, but a lot of it is tax-free. I was like, where have you been? And this is what happens with the talented 10th. And this is what I find with unfortunately, a lot of our people, what happens, who would be prime good mentors and leaders. I say leaders, guidance, but prime mentors. But a lot of them, they move out, they leave. And what happens is when it comes to certain situations, they want to be the head in the front of it. It's just like, it's one of our biggest issues that we have over here in the UK, where a lot of our best and brightest, they just leave. And it becomes a case of, okay, then so who is actually going to be able to guide these young people here? Because these people now have gone, but you need someone on the ground, someone on the day-to-day, someone on that level. And that's the kind of sort of the question that I've been looking at. Some of the things where when I look at this space, that's one of the biggest things I've observed on the space that all of us, men and women alike, are looking for. We're looking for that person to guide us. We're looking for that person who we can, ask that question, how to get from here to A to B. We're asking that question, how do we do these things? And this is what, again, unfortunately, they fall prey to a lot of these charlatans because they don't know. At the end of the day, everyone's just trying to make it. It is what it is. But a lot of times you just don't know. And one of the things which I could have definitely used in my early life, people, I always go through this in my life. I'm pretty sure other people do as well, where if I could go back to my younger self and give my younger self just one piece of advice, I'm like this. A lot of it will be to do with sometimes my financial situation. If I just be honest with yourself, there's situations where unfortunately didn't get the right guidance, or sometimes I have to blame myself for being stupid. But there are situations where, I'll be honest with yourself, if I just made a different decision, if I just made a different financial decision, particularly when you're young and stupid, because one of the things I remember is when I was a student, one of the first things you get tempted into is I don't know if it's the same right now, but you get an overdraft. So you get an overdraft, and not only an overdraft, you get a £2,000 overdraft. Now, I don't know why people do it, because had I knew what I know now, I'm like, no chance in hell. Because let's be honest, an overdraft is just credit. It's a line of credit. So the first thing that they do is they give you a line of credit. Say, yeah, you're a student, get your line of credit, it will be fine. They go through the T's and C's very quickly, but let's be honest, set up your overdraft. It's the same when it comes to the credit card. I remember sitting there, just like, yeah, we can offer you this, we can offer you that. And I'm like, yeah. You can get an extra this, extra that. You can pay for a holiday, you can do all this. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And this was the time when they were selling PPI to everyone. So if anyone remembers anything about PPI, they were just handing it out. But I'm just like this, my days, had I known what I know now about certain situations, and this is the thing about bad advice, particularly when it comes to things like dating and financial advice in particular. I got myself in a situation where I didn't know how I was going to get out of it, because let's be honest, I basically maxed myself out. Credit cards, they dropped down my limit because I wasn't keeping up with the payments, being an idiot, but they was doing certain things. And here's the thing, what I didn't realize is the impact it would have on my credit report. Again, another thing, which I'm like, if I only knew what I knew now, and this is unfortunately life teaches you, if you only knew what you knew now, you would do different. But it is what it is. But my credit took a massive hit. And once you maxed out, guess what you need? You need extra money. So guess what happened there? If I don't know anything about payday loans, your boy got into that payday loan loop because I was a student. I was working but not getting paid that much. I needed to keep on with certain bills that I had at the time. It's just like I got myself into a debt trap. So not only did I have credit, which I was paying back the bare minimum, another thing that they tell you, pay the bare minimum. What they don't tell you is how basically you should never in your life pay the bare minimum when it comes to credit card. That's the one piece of advice now that I've ever learned. When you have a credit card, the idea is to spend a little bit of it, but by the next payment schedule, pay it all off in full. That's how you should be operating your credit card. You shouldn't go within, I want to say, at least 75% of your credit limit. That's what they say. That's how you're meant to keep a good credit report. But really and truly, you're supposed to pay off your credit card straight away. As soon as you made a payment on maybe petrol or something stupid, then clear it all off. That's how you're supposed to build your credit. But unfortunately, to get a credit or build credit, you need credit itself. It's such a stupid debt trap. It was so stupid. But in order for me to get credit or to get a credit report or credit file, I had to get a credit card. It's just the most stupidest thing in my life. Because had I known what I know now, I'd be like, don't get debt. But, to even get a mortgage, you need a credit report. You need credit history. And what they do is that they give you these credit cards to, we'll give you this credit card, this introductory credit card. We'll give you this, we'll give you that, blah, 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 blah. And unfortunately, your boy, he got into a debt trap. He got into these payday loans, which if anything knows about payday loans, flipping it, the interest you pay on these bad boys. I remember taking out a loan for like £100. And by the time I paid it off, I must have spent £400 because of the interest, because you can roll it over, because that's how crazy when it comes to the payday loans that I got into. And it was so mad that I took another payday loan to clear off that other payday loan, and it got into a complete seismic mess. So I was just like flipping it. But this is what happens. This is why, again, if I could go back in time and give myself some advice, I would do it. But again, if you don't have that kind of advice, then guess what? You fall prey to certain things that take place. And one of the things I fell prey to with my financial situation, if I'll be open honest with you, is I got myself a default on one of my credit cards. The funniest thing, it was a stupid Capital One credit card for £100 that I missed a payment on. It defaulted. And guess what happened? Flipping heck. I got a default on my credit report. Again, this opened my eyes to everything about credit report. And once you have a default registered to your name, that bad boy stays on your file for 7 years. Once I realized what happened, I was like, flipping hell. And here's the thing, that impacts your ability to get credit. It completely, I want to say halves. Your credit number, your credit file, your credit score, it goes straight down because you had that default, that D. And I'm like, pause. And this was a small line of credit, but it doesn't matter. What credit companies are looking for, what they're seeing is, have you been good with the little amount of resources that you've had? That's all it is. And I was too stupid to even realize it. I thought it's only £100, it's fine. And I was just too stupid. And if I could have the advice that I had, if I could give myself the advice, and this is what a lot of people are looking for. This is why I'm asking the question. Do you have people in your life to give you that kind of sound advice? Now, some things are stupid. I'll be honest with you. Some things I did, do not get me wrong. I am not absolving myself of any sort of blame. I'm the one who did it. I'm the one who took it out. I'm the one who got myself in that mess. But it just goes to show you exactly how there's certain situations you get yourself in life. It takes an age to get out of it. It took me an age to get out of this debt trap. That's one of the things about finances and debt. We talk about slavery. We talk about physical chains. We talk about how that's so bad. But I'm going to be honest with you. Financial slavery is probably the biggest trap, the biggest chain you can put on anyone in the 21st century. It's still legal. The financial debt trap. I'm telling you, once you're in a financial debt trap, do you know the impact that it has on your family? I mean, we talk about how people are born in situations where they can go to get contacts because they have the wealth, they have the finances. Well, flip it in reverse. If you have a situation where you do not have the finances, a lot of the access to certain things gets restricted because you don't have the capital, the ability to do certain things. When it comes to where you're living, the area that you're living in, let's be honest, if you're likely to have lower social-economic situations, you can live in a poorer area. You're going to shop at situations where you can't shop at. You're going to be restricted to certain things. No matter how, free education is, we pay it on tax, but no matter how free certain things are, there's certain things which, let's be honest, you are now blocked out of, particularly when you get into certain situations like Lewis Hamilton, per example. He could not get into Formula One unless he had sponsorship. Now, the regular person cannot get into certain fields, no matter how much they try, unless they are in certain situations like a rich family, unless in a situation where they have their contacts, because the average person can't afford to send their kids to certain places. That's why when it comes to the UK, there's a massive class divide. Look at the prime ministers. Look at them. Where did they all come from? Most of them come from Eton. Most of them come from that region. Why? And guess what? Eton is a private educated school. How much do you think that costs? Who do you think can go there? It's only a certain segment of people who can go there. That's why we talk about this race thing. We talk about this, which still is an issue. Do not get me wrong. But it's no way near an issue as financial, I suppose, wealth, but finances at play. If you have a lot of the finances, you can go to places, you can do things that, let's be honest, for the average person, for people who are just completely out of the loop, clueless, there is no way near you can even ascertain or get to the level that they've got to. Because let's be honest, a lot of these MPs, they're millionaires before they get to MP status. Rishi Sunak, I mean, he's Asian, but I'm pretty sure he's married to a billionaire's wife. He's pretty much a millionaire himself. Priti Patel. All these people come from affluent families. So not only do they get the benefit of being able to go to certain places, but they have the contacts. They have the guidance. They have the leadership. They've been the people where they've been fortunate enough, privileged, not due to their fault. Again, I just want to preface it, not due to their fault, but they've been in a situation where they've been able to bypass a lot of things that other people have been able to bypass, purely from the fact of they've had access to people in their life, in their immediate life, not people on their YouTube, not people on their internet, their immediate life who can give them tangible guidance, tangible mentorship, things which, again, I think a lot of people we're just missing. And again, a lot of times because when people ascend to that level, people just leave. The time to temp, they go about their business. They don't want to come back. Again, they don't have to. I understand that. But what happens is it leaves a void, leaves a gap where people are thinking, how do I get to that place? How do I get to that place? How do I get from A to B? And it's like, yep, that's how it is. It's even in my workplace on a smaller level. I mean, one of the things which I was asked recently was, do I have a mentor? I scratched my head a little bit because I was like, no, a workplace mentor, shall I say. I'm like, no, I don't have a workplace mentor. And that got me thinking even more, because a lot of people who have passed or who have passed me, you've gone on to bigger and better things, as you said, they've done a different route. They've had workplace mentors. They've had people who, again, can lead them in the right path. And I'm like, I've never had a mentor at work. I've never had this sort of stuff. And this is the thing as well, where I'm like, man, there are certain situations where I think we really could do better. I think we could position ourselves better. I also think we need to be aware of certain things where I'm like, flipping heck. They've had that situation where, again, it's not what they know, it's who they know. They know that person to get invited to this place, to do that place, to do that thing. A lot of times you're wondering, how the hell did they do that? Well, my mentor is this person. That person knows that person. That person knows this person. That person knows that person. I'm just like, man alive. And for the uninitiated like me, who's, sweating blood, sweat and tears in jobs to try and make sure I get a good reputation, to try and get another job, to try and apply for another internal position, to try and apply for another internal position. Whereas other people, it's like, how is it that you seem to, well, yep, I know how they did it. They're cool with so-and-so. They're cool with so-and-so. They know so-and-so. Or that so-and-so is their mentor. That so-and-so is their, I'm like, Matt, there it is. There it is. And a lot of times we seem to lack that. So this is the whole point of the live stream today, about how when I look at the space, and I got to be fair and balanced about these spaces, a lot of us are just looking for people who we can just take advice from, looking for people who can give us sober advice. And this is it. This is the key about everything. Who do you take advice from? Who do you take guidance from? Because a lot of times I'm like this. It's not just about advice. It's about sober advice. It's about sober mentorship. It's about people who, let's be honest, I'm not saying they have to be pretty much pristine, perfect, because that don't exist. They don't exist. It doesn't exist. But I'm just like this. Are there people who you respect in your life, or who you can at least touch? You can contact them. You can phone them. You can have a sit down and chat with them and talk about these sort of situations, because it's not just the regular person. Jay-Z, I'm pretty sure Warren Buffett is his mentor. He sits down and have a talk with him. P. Diddy, he has a mentor. He sits down and talk with him. These are rich, successful people. You think to yourself, why do rich, successful people need mentors? Because they know the game. They know the game. So I'm like, if they know the game, why aren't we playing the same game? Even though it's on a smaller scale, why aren't we playing that same game? But this is how the difference between certain classes move, how certain people move who are in the know, because they know the importance of, and this is something which I struggle with, networking. They know the importance of networking with people. They know the importance of networking with, let's be honest, certain types of people. You ever realize in certain places, certain people, if you're really, really, really aware, particularly in your workplace, they like to get in with certain types of people. I thought it was like brown nose. I was like, oh, here we go again, brown nosing. But there's a method to the madness. And it's not until you're older you realize such an idiot. But certain people, they get in with certain types of people because guess what? They know that they can guess whispers, when maybe cigarette break or maybe what it is. They have whispers. They have conversations off the books, which sometimes when I see internal positions being hired, I'm like, how did that position get? How did he get there? I'm like, oh, that's why. That's why. They had that behind the scene conversation, had all this. You only have to look at government to see how this gets played through when it comes to the contracts, when it comes to COVID and PPE, and how the people who had the PPE contracts, they were related. They were the people who in the House of Lords, and yet there was this million pound contracts on these PPE. Like, how the hell did that happen? Because it's all about nepotism. It's all about who they know. It's all about, this is how the game is played. And I'm like, damn, here's me sweating my ass off, sweating my backside off, right? All, trying to get above water. And hear these people swanning in because they have the network, they have the right people who they know, they have the guidance, they have it. And a lot of times, again, they have it from day one, but they have the people who they know who can give it to them. And that's why I'm just like, man alive. That's one thing which I would definitely recommend people do, no matter how young you are. Network. Who are you speaking to? And I'm not saying you have to be horrible to people who you don't think can do good by you. Don't get me wrong, but network with the right people. Network with people who you know are in a place or in a position which you are going to aspire to be. And asking the questions. How did you get here? What did you do? What path did you take? Who did he speak to? All these kind of things, which a lot of times, I'm being honest with you, I'm just like, bruh. If only I knew, but it is what it is. But let me just say hello to chat. I've been talking for a while, so I didn't want this live stream to be too long. So I appreciate everyone for joining. Make sure you like the stream. There are 40 people watching. We've got 10 likes. Can we get that up to like 12, 13? I appreciate each and every one of you. But yeah, let me look at the chat, see what's going on. But yeah, Skills man, Capital One are the worst. I got got by Capital One, but it's my fault. It's my fault. It is what it is. But yeah, it is a debt trap. Bro from what's going on? How's it going? Not saying hello to you. Jonas Osman. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's another thing as well. House prices, which I didn't talk about. Again, another situation where if you're lucky enough to being born in a situation where you have parents who have that kind of bread to give to you, absolutely. I mean, when you look at, the idea is to at least have 10%, but really 20% of the house value, what you're looking for. But when you look at some of the house prices, when you look at the repayments and the interest, it's just madness. And this is why I'll say this. This is the old school. This is the old school thing, which I'm still involved in, but I don't know how old the chat is on average, but I don't know if people would know what this is, but we called it the partner hand back in the day. So for like a lot of Caribbeans, what used to happen because of things like financial constraints and because of banks and things that nature weren't really lending to black folk in the same way, or there's a lot of discrimination. What a lot of black people did, because they didn't want to get ripped off because of teeth, is they had a partner hand, where this is where the community came into place, where everyone else was coming together, banding together. They would have the partner. You put together your money, and what would happen is that it'd be like a massive lump sum that each and every one who was participating in the partner hand, they would get their share either each week, each month, however the partner would be constructed. That's what we would do. We would network together, and that's what would happen. And a lot of us, that's how we'll get on the housing market, because we would all band together. We'll put down a little bit that we had, and then I'll make up a lot, and then we'll get the down deposit to be able to buy houses or do what we need to do. And that's what used to happen back in the day. I don't know how prevalent it is when it comes, to this younger generation, because I'm involved in one right now. But the person who does it, she's an elderly woman, so she you know what I mean. So she does it old school. She wants it by cash. I'm like, I don't do cash, I don't do them things. But that's how it used to be back in the day. So yeah, I mean, I hear you when it comes to that, not putting down the minimum payment for a house. But I'm telling you, nowadays, particularly nowadays, it's a case where unless you have that ability where you got the bank of mum and dad to drop some serious bread and you've done some savings yourself, you might be in a bit of a trap, particularly if you want to own a house. Because let's be honest, houses are they're likely to be the most expensive purchase you'll ever have in your career, in your life. No doubt. No doubt. But yeah, absolutely. Fiona, what's up? How's it going? But yeah, the dude, you're 100% correct. And this is the main thing about a lot of times we have seen this when it comes to people who have access to guides, mentors, and they do it the right way. Classism. A lot of these people, they get in by who they know as opposed to what they know. And it's just like, if you can rub shoulders with some of these people in some of these places, I'm telling you, man, your life is pretty much not an easy street. I'm not going to be disrespectful, but it's going to be a hell of a lot easier than other people. But the problem is, how do you get to that situation? And a lot of times it's just by courtesy of their birth. I mean, again, I have to use the example of MPs and use the example of our politicians. A lot of them. And this isn't just conservatives. This isn't just typically Republicans. This is both Labour and Conservative. A lot of them, if you look at their family, it's like they come from wealth. They come from higher up. They come from situations which, again, you can tell how they got there. A lot of them study what they study at university. It's called PP, isn't it? It's politics, something else, but it's something that all these politicians, they all study at university. Let me see if I can get it up. It's like economics or something else at university that they study. I'm trying to think what the heck it is. If someone in the chat can remind me, that's it. Philosophy, politics, and economics. There we go. So that's what a lot of them study. And it's just like, it's a breeding ground for certain types of people. And this is how they get networked in. You hear about all these flipping skull and bone type fraternities, which I'm like, until it got revealed by because of David Cameron, I had no idea who these people even are. So it's just like, man, it's crazy. Yeah, PPE. Yeah, that's right. Politics, philosophy, economics. Stereotypical degree for these highfalutin politicians and highfalutin people in high places. But at the end of the day, it's a great place to network. It's a great place where these people can get their mentors, get their guidance, get their leadership from. It is what it is. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to not labor too long because I don't want to keep this too long because there's other people with lives. So I don't want to impact on their lives, even on I'm a small channel. But I'm just going to open up the chat just to get your feedback on this about how do you view the importance of having sort of mentorships? And we talk about leaders and stuff, but I'm only talking about mentors, people who can guide you, particularly when you're in the workforce, because that's one of the that's the majority of your life. Once you get past studying, is going to be spent in the workplace. So my question is, because you spend majority of your life in the workplace, do you have somebody who can cater, nurture you to get to the place where, let's be honest, you want to get to? Because we all have dreams, we all have ambitions, we all have goals. That's fair play. But who's guiding you to get there? Because it's not everything that your parents can teach you. It's not everything that YouTube can really teach you. You can teach you certain little tricks and nibbly bits, but let's be honest. And the thing again with the internet, as powerful as it has been and as great as it has been, so for this younger generation, you are in a situation of a lifetime where you have so much information, so many things you can do, so many different routes you can take. But the problem with that is there's misinformation. There are people out there who, let's be honest, aren't giving you the right information. And again, one of the things in my lifetime, which again, I've been subject to, and it took me a hell of a long time to get out of, is once you made a bad mistake in a couple of situations, like financial situations, you know how difficult it is to get out of. And you know the burden that it has. That's why when it comes to single mothers and things of that nature, and just single parents, do you know that it's not just about the whole burden of there's got a single mother in the household. It's the burden of finances, which again, doesn't often get talked about. Financially, they're in a complete mess. And that's like an anchor, not only to them, because kids are a liability. Kids are a liability. Let's just keep it real. Kids are a liability. And because of that, it's like an anchor, and it holds you down. I know we don't want to hear it like this, but it holds you down because of the financial stress it causes on the kids, because they can't go to certain places, they can't do certain things, and it's like an anchor. And and so financial situation, financial slavery, financial debt is number one things where if you make that wrong decision, I'm telling you, it can hurt you for depending on what it is, a lifetime. And the second one is for certain who you, I suppose, have a long-term relationship with, or who you have or who you're married to. Let's be honest. There are two situations. That's why the dating relationship situation is so huge, what it is, because particularly when it comes to women, if they make the wrong call, they make the wrong decision, get impregnated by the wrong guy, I'm telling you, they're in a whole world of pain. I mean, those guys, we have a bit more leeway because of, we can have kids later on in our years. And let's be honest, a lot of guys, they can abscond and have another family. For the woman, it's completely different. So we have to be fair and balanced here. And then with that, they lose time. They lose, again, finances, again, single mother thing. And they lose the ability, let's be honest, later in their life to be able to attract a partner who could maybe, help them out a bit better than they could do. Because let's be honest, they're not a catch. At that stage, at a certain age, once they've had their kids, it becomes a downward spiral. And we've all seen the content creators talk about it, and they're not half wrong. They're not half wrong. So they're the situation that can hold you back. And it's so important to get the right information, because making these wrong decisions, I'm telling you right now, you're in a whole world of pain. And that's why it's so key to have the right information, the right kind of guidance and leadership, but mentorship in your life. Bo, welcome to the chat. How's it going?
How's it going, man?
Going good.
Hey, no, I was surprised when you brought up W.E.B. Du Bois.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know how influential is he in the UK, because over here, we have the Divine Nine and the MPHC and all that still goes on today, that really is like the breeding ground for our black elite, the Boule. And that was like, that all plays into the talented 10 and whatnot. Like, do you all have that structure over there?
So I would say it's nowhere near as pronounced. So the influence of W. Du Bois is more on I would say, underground level. So I would say I've not really heard a lot of people talk about him in the same token, probably as it would be over there. So I would say in terms of, I could be wrong. People in the chat, let me know if you heard of W. Du Bois, but no, it's no way near in that sort of same aim. But I will say this: the UK is full of class and elitism. But for black folk, I don't know. I could be wrong. It could be a situation where people have heard it and it's just not talked about. But I've never been. It's not been like a massive talking point over here. So yeah.
So there's a structure to our elitism over here, right? That's why I asked. And at the time when I was younger, I didn't understand it, right? I didn't understand it. So when I was in school, it's like I looked at it kind of like corny in a way. But as I look now, like the way that it's structured, and when you talk about mentorships and all that, when you went to talking about mentorships and all that, that's where they come in at. And to their credit, they do cultivate from within, and they offer that opportunity for mentorship and all that. But it's such an insulated type, almost like it's weird the way it is, right? But it just goes to show that we really don't have black leaders as in America as some people may think, right? So what we have black institutions like these Greek organizations and all that, and their main objective, right, is to the organization. So you'll always see them repping that organization, right? So Kamala Harris, for example, right, she's an AKA. So as a unit, as a member of the NPHC, right, the National Pan, it's called the Divine Nine, right? The National Pan Hellenic Council, right? And that comprises all of the different fraternities. So you've seen this overwhelming blind support, whereas they weren't advocating for Kamala Harris, right, for what she'll do for the black community. It was simply as one of their sorors and what she'll do for the brand of the organization. And you see like as a community how it plays out, where so many people prop themselves up and they have these structures to prop them up just to push an agenda as if it's for the black community, but really it's for that structure and for whatever white group is at the top.
Now, can I ask a question?
That directs them.
Now, does that sort of, I suppose, ladder or system, does that help people from lower economic backgrounds, or is it, again, it's structured to only a certain, if you're part of the boule or part of it in terms of birth, you I know I always hear a lot of times when Americans speak, black Americans, their mothers are an AKA their fathers, so they're like, I forgot what they call it, but you know what I mean, they're a part of that type of thing. But does it help people who aren't part of it?
They're links.
All right.
Well, it creates that classist system. Really,
Yep.
that's all it does. It creates a system of uppity Negroes and like a sense of entitlement, so to speak. But as far as it's like trickle down economics, man. If you believe in trickle down economics, then maybe some people might say they do. They might do your
Yeah, a little
local
bit.
book
Yeah,
bag giveaway in the ghetto or something like that.
but it don't really do anything. Yeah,
But as far as the networking and really pulling up from within, they only elevate and promote from within. So
right.
in the grand scheme of things, no, I don't believe so.
No, that's fair. That's fair because, yeah, again, from the outside, it's probably through a different way, but you always see again the rags to riches story, etc. But it's always done in a different sort of way as opposed to being cultivated from, again, I suppose that type of either fraternity or that system. Because I suppose the system it cultivates and it cultivates the class, doesn't it? The system, so it's always
It
interesting.
creates a hierarchy within the community.
And that's it. I mean, I was going to ask, and I don't know if it's a personal question, but do you have kind of a mentor or a guide in your sort of life at all? Do you have that sort of situation, or have you been privy to situation to maybe if it's career, life wise? Do you have that sort?
The sad part about it, right, is that the most influential ones I've had have come from outside of our community.
That's something I've not said. Continue. Sorry.
Yeah, like within it, I've had black ones too, but I'm gonna say like the most influential and the most that wasn't in no way connected or related to me came from outside of our community, like Cubans and white people.
Now, is that because I made a point that when it comes to like the talented tenant, or even just our talented people, they have a bit of a resentment. They've made it, or they look as this as probably leftovers and they leave. Is that the reason why you feel, or in your experience, shall I say, it's not come from in the community, it's come from outside the community?
Being black, right? There's it's a certain level of, how can I put it, like almost entitlement or recognition that they want from you before they'll really take you in, right? So it goes beyond just, but when you go outside of your community, it's more so like, you want to learn, you know how to do it, come on. You know what I mean? Like there's less baggage that comes with it, you know what I mean? So they might have you like with a lot of these things, these fraternities, you got to go to this and go to that, and they just want they want to be elevated in a way to like a savior complex, like you mentioned earlier. It's not as clear cut and dry as dealing with people from outside your community, where they're just open the ranks to you. It's like, because within our community, there's the saying, the game is to be sold, not told. And so they they lock a lot of doors and want to be.
Oh, hello. Have you just cut out there, bro? Oh, you still with me?
I say we have a lot of gatekeeping in our community because there's a saying that the game is to be sold, not told.
Yep.
So before they open the doors to you, you gotta, I guess, prove yourself to them. Kiss their ass.
Absolutely, but no. Appreciate your viewpoint. I'm gonna go to the Duke, bro. I know you've been having some audio issues, but I'm just gonna go to the Duke because I know he wanted to come up and explain kind of sort of the class system in the UK. I know you have a good handle it. So the Duke. I don't know if you want to touch on that or even just a general topic as well.
What's up?
You're probably going to both, but yeah. Hey, what's up?
Hey, I'm doing good. This was a great topic. Can you hear me?
I can. Are you experiencing a lag?
No. I'm fine. I'm just checking. But yeah. So to make a clear difference I really like this topic because of course I've delved into it on my platform. But when it comes to class in the UK, it's very distinct in comparison to the US. And in the US, I've definitely, like what he's been saying, I've already studied into it, and he's spot on when it comes to the Divine Nine. That's something we don't have. We don't have college fraternities or these sort of networks. But what we do have is a certain social status. Like in the UK, generally class is the major thing. Like you can't, like whoever comes from outside the UK, migrate to the UK, fit in somewhere eventually. and they fit in very nicely. That's why I said in the comment section, if a black man has money, he can rub shoulders with particular, nobility of that same wealth. All it takes is for them to put their kids into certain boarding schools, private schools around England, and they're already connected somehow. And then, if you speak to certain people who may claim that as well, the way you speak really defines who you are in the UK. So if a black person sounds like a Londoner or sounds like he grew up around privilege, you can tell straight away, and he has certain circles. So in America, where you kind of have certain connections to sort of attach yourself to wealth, in the UK you can just tell from how they present themselves. So yeah, that's how I would say it. We don't have fraternities in the UK, but if you go to specific universities like Cambridge or Oxford, you're straight away inserted into this world. A lot of our MPs may have that. For example, Diane Abbott, she's not very popular everywhere, but she went to Cambridge and she had so many connections with people in the liberal elite. And so it really comes down to how fluid class can be in the UK. You just have to insert yourself in it. And with that money, with that status, you're free to go. What, you want to add anything else?
From what you've seen, do you feel like it's easier to navigate in the UK as opposed to the US through those circles?
Yes. Yeah, I would say this. A lot of people who are wealthy in the UK came from wealth from outside the UK. So I've mentioned in before on this platform is that how a lot of Africans may have had money from oil money, tycoons, you've heard of, and they invest a lot in the UK. They come in, raise their kids here, just like the Russians and the Chinese do, and they insert themselves in it. They'll buy up property in London, expensive, millions and millions, and just insert themselves in it. And you know what? The British would accept it. Like, okay, they're bringing in more welfare, we'll accept them as one of us. It's a very strange relationship where you don't have to be completely British, but if you can place yourself in this position with money, you're good to go. And if you raise your kids the way we raise ours, you're good to go. You know what I mean?
But that's the key, though, into the Duke, and that's where I'll say it's still probably harder because, and this is what I'll talk about. Some people rub shoulders just because they have that financial wealth, and if you don't have that, you can't rub shoulders with these people. It's like it wasn't until I got really, really older where I met someone who went to a private school. It's like people around me didn't go to private school. It's unless you have the finance to do these things, and that's the key. You are, I won't say lost, but you're likely only going to rub shoulders maybe in passing if you go to certain hotspots, or let's be honest, if you're an attractive woman, you get into certain these places. There's certain situations where if you don't have that, a lot of it's by courtesy of they may be born into a wealthy situation, or if they come overseas, they've been able to build up their wealth. But yeah, that's the key. That's the key. I was going to ask you on the Duke in regards to the topic of mentors and guides. How do you see that in terms of your everyday life? I was going to ask, how do you see the importance of it? Do you have any sort of guides or mentors in your life?
For me, I would say, a few. Before I touch on mine specifically, I would say when it comes to the UK, you mentioned how it is hard to kind of break through to the next sort of social class. For example, I moved from East London to North London, went to a different school, and I was exposed to a lot of people who were, I guess, wealthy or went to boarding school or whatever. My sisters would say they have a few friends who went to Eton, like guy friends. So I was very shocked and exposed to that world because majority of Londoners don't know about, how they live. They have more connections. They have more, I guess, mentors. They benefit from nepotism because if they have parents who are doctors, politicians here and there, they have the connections I don't, and they sound a certain way. For me personally, when it comes to mentorship, it's very much close to family. I don't know if because of my culture, but if let's say I want to go into healthcare, I have an uncle who's a doctor, I have a aunt who's a nurse, and in a way, it's like that's the only way we find connection, and maybe through churches. Just like a friend of a friend or a family member will kind of connect you to someone. Beyond that, I think it's been quite easy for me to find someone to, I guess, help me out. Like right now, I have an uncle who's helping me out in my career. Yeah, that's how I would see it. It's not like a strange topic to me. So when I think of mentors, I've kind of have been exposed to that, and I guess lucky to have that.
I was going to say, yeah, and honestly, it's not your fault. You can't control how you were born, where you moved to, and that's one of the things which, if you live outside, to be honest, that London bubble, you don't get exposed to a lot of these things where, because you guys will have situations where you have a council estate, and across the road you have a 1.2 million pound house. You go to anywhere else, classes live together. Like I only live with people who were like, my houses were like worth what 100,000 on the whole same street. You don't get that kind of mesh where you guys would get down in that hot pocket. It's just, unfortunately, you just have to be lucky where you're born, who you're born to. It's not nothing you can control to. It just is what it is. But that's one of the things which I will say is like all these things count for everything, and it's crazy. But it's just that all of us aren't born equal, even if we look the same. All of us don't have the same cards, even if we're in the same school. It's just two different things. But no, I get it. But yeah, I like the fact that you have that in your life, and it's working out for you, man. Because that's good. That's good. Bro from Brum.
Can I add one more thing?
Go ahead.
Sorry, just one more thing. Sorry, Brum. Yeah, when it comes to London being like a pocket, like a bubble, it even gets deeper when it comes to different boroughs. Like where I moved, like I said, in North London. If you've heard of a place called Foster's, like it's near Enfield, Barnet.
I know it's from a
weird pocket where. Yeah, like mansions and like people who live like kind of celebrity life. It's like then you have like council estates on the side as well. I was exposed to that. I was like living in between that world. It's like, how is it possible you can have these neighborhoods in the same place and, you know, mix with certain people in school? It's just weird. Like certain parts of London, you're just like, you see the buffer zone between these wealthy elites and the regular people, you know? So I was already exposed to that, and I realized I had to learn how to maneuver around these people. If I went to school, I can hear that they are from a different world than what I was used to. So I had to sound a certain way. So switching up, you know, with certain friends of mine. So that exposure was almost like frightening, but it taught me a lot about the UK when it comes to class and upbringing and things like that. Yeah,
no, I hear you, but absolutely, and that's just courtesy of who you've been able to rub shoulders with. But no, it's just flipping egg. You just don't get that anywhere else, and that's why it's such a. When we talk about divide, it's just mad. When it comes to presenters, news broadcasters, you only hear one type of voice, one type of place, and that's why when it comes to, I'm going on a bit of a tangent here, so apologies to any of my Londoners, but that's why I get pissed off when every single time when people say London, they think it's the UK. No, London is not the UK. There's a place outside of it. And it's interchangeable, because what they've done is they've completely cocooned themselves and have said fuck off to the rest of the UK. So it kind of gets me annoyed, but it is what it is. It's nothing you can control, but it just pisses me off to no end. I'm telling you. Bro from Brum, how's it going? Have you got your audio sorted out? You all good to go? Can you hear us?
Yeah, sort of. Can you hear me?
Kind of. It's a bit muffled, but yeah, I can hear you.
Wait, give it a minute. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you do sound too laggy. You sound a bit low.
I sound low. Okay, 1 second. How's it now? Can you hear me now?
We can roll with it. We can roll with it.
Don't worry. Sure.
Hello?
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's too much lagging.
I tell you what, yeah, you might have to. I don't know if you're on another, you need to hook up to another device or something, but yeah, try coming back in again. Going out and come back in again. Yeah, okay, fair enough then. But yeah, you seem to have a lot of problems, bro, from Brum. So it may just be a case of another device. Or
can we touch on? Can we touch on the, I guess, the bourgeoisie equivalent in the UK? Like Bo Diddley mentioned how, you know, the talented and the boule folks that exist in America, they're very well aware of them, right? And, you know, it's a big topic in America. But then in the UK, I feel like we can't point to certain people and say, yeah, they are the boule of the UK. You know what I mean?
No, 100% agree. Now, I don't know whether that's just because I'm sure you'll explain why, but is that just because they're they're underground. It's a case of they're not. I'm assuming they're just not publicized. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that then?
I would say, yeah. So from what I've read into it, they're not like attached to the UK. Like a lot of the elites have their own commitments in other parts. Like if they're from the islands, they're wealthier, they live in the UK, but they have real estate somewhere else. So like in Africa, if they're wealthy in Kenya or somewhere, it's almost as if the UK is like the back pocket for them. A lot of them send their kids, like I said before, to private schools here, raise them here, and then they travel somewhere else. It's almost like the UK is a haven for all these wealthy folks. So when it comes to the black elite, it's almost like the UK is a playground for them in a way. It's weird. That's that I'm talking about, the elites, like on top, like the 1%, and then you've got those underneath, just below them, are people who kind of work their way up. Like they kind of progress from middle class to upper middle class. They're in certain professions that we consider more prestige, and the thing is, they have their own circles, and they kind of keep to themselves, but there's nothing special about them. Like being Black British to them means nothing. It's almost like they're just like everyone else. While in America, they're more distinct. Like it's a legacy. Maybe 3 generations of wealth being carried on. The elites of the Divine Nine. And what else? Yeah, when I read about Lawrence Otis Graham, he just passed away 2 months ago. He wrote a book called Our Kind of People, and essentially from the slavery days till today, there's this sort of legacy of families that kept to themselves, and they have an actual identity, so that's why it's more prevalent there. While in the UK, there's no commitment to UK plight, anything. I'll call them fleeting. You know what I mean?
I was going to ask you on that because I wanted to get into sort of the psychology of it all, because like you're saying, if they're not really, they don't feel like they're one of us, they're fleeting. A lot of them use UK as a billionaire's play toy, because you see him buy up so many properties, and then there's some of them are empty properties that they only go there once every year. Or a lot of times when you see all these Arabs flying their cars, they're rich supercars, and you know what I mean. I completely get what you're saying. So in terms of psychology, then, because the title of the stream is all about, can we access these people for even have that kind of, when it comes to Black people, just bring race into it. Do they have a psychology? We don't see you as one of us, even not because they're Black, but because you don't have any wealth, and we just cocoon ourselves and we don't care about you. Is there a psychology thing with that, do you think?
First, sorry. Yeah, go on.
From an African American's perspective, right? What I've seen, what I know from being around them, right? There's a lot of them, right? They have the mentality as though this never-ending quest to assimilate into whiteness, right? Well, even though they might be on the exterior Black, have a Black partner, but their quest is to assimilate into whiteness, to have the access to the country clubs and move into those white spaces and be accepted into those white spaces. So they don't have the mentality they work hard to distinguish themselves from other Black people.
And that's what I wanted to get at. I wanted to see whether that's the case, where they want to be different. They want to see themselves as different. They probably do see themselves as different, because again, just being stereotypical in the UK, at least, when you look at these rich people, politicians who are born or not born here, there's a certain stereotype that gets attached to them, where it's like, their friend circles, their partnership relationship, there's a certain stereotype. And I don't know the psychology of them because I don't know them personally, but there's a certain type of surely there's psychology involved with that. So what do you think? Is there some sort of psychology about that?
Let me just add this one caveat too, and not necessarily to be with white people if they can't, but to replicate a similar type environment with Black people that think like them, that they feel as though they can almost to replicate the environment. Even if you look at the history of the Boule, it was modeled after the Skull and Bones, you know what I mean? Which was a white fraternity at Yale. So they have this thing. So the sports they play, the things they try to get their children into, is almost into assimilating into, I want to whiteness, you know what I mean? But you go ahead.
Yeah, they're trying to recreate a white power structure, but whiteness. But yeah, I'll say a little bit of a black.
And see, this is the difference I noticed, like the distinct difference I noticed about being wealthy in America and being wealthy in the UK. Being wealthy in America as a black man is not enough. You have to kind of prove yourself. So in order to do that, you have to imitate white America, and that seems like a lot more work, and that's something they've been doing over time. In the UK, however, you have a sort of a culture of where as long as you have the money and wealth, like there's nothing. The way you treat Britain is more like a place where you can place your wealth in, rather than I have to imitate Britishness. No, it's more like I'll raise my kids here. They can sound English. They could gain, collect the education they can gather from, and then come back home. So a lot of them travel a lot, right? So when it comes to whiteness, I don't think that's something they, strive for. They don't try and imitate white Britishness. They would rather just take, like, okay, we've taken the values of Britishness, but we're still African, or we're still, wealthy people from the Caribbean islands. This is what I've come across, and
but you know what
one example would be, yeah.
Oh, one thing I think the reason why is because when it comes to, if you talk about the UK and the US is madly patriotic. Yeah. The UK is not. Yeah, I think a lot of it is because Britain is not patriotic. It doesn't hold itself to because let's be honest, when it comes to this whole conversation of last year, woke wars, they're trying to say this is what British culture is about, or it's an attack on British culture, but it's never been as patriotic as the US. Where I think that's probably one of the main reasons why. It's a case of Britain is nowhere near as patriotic, so that unless you have, so having wealth is enough, because it is not like a certain, you have to have a certain way, you have to, so I'm being stereotypical, drink tea and crumpets. It's not that kind of thing, because Britain's never really held itself as a patriotic force, at least nowadays anyway.
Exactly. That's exactly what I want to touch to this, is that a lot of the children who grew up in wealth in Britain, and they're, Black African, they are expected to be more bilingual because they're from somewhere else, but they're brought up here. So when it comes to their wealth, is as if they can embrace being British, but they're not expected to imitate this patriotism. You know what I mean? So it's exactly what you just said. And in a way, it's just weird. Like, if you look up all these private schools and you see the kids that are there, a lot of them that are Black are from somewhere else. They're not from here. And the thing is, they're brought up here from a young age. They start to sound like us, right? Yeah. The rest of us, but they have an attachment to somewhere else. So a lot of these wealthy people don't need to imitate Englishness. So exactly, they're not as patriotic. I would say it resonates back to the colonial days. If you think about it, the Commonwealth is sort of a legacy of which Britain embraced. The idea of having all these different states around the world representing Britain, but they can keep their culture. We don't want them to act like us, but they could, do what they want, but we own them. You know what I mean? So that's just the attitude that still carries on today. A lot of the ethnics who are in these upper echelons, they can have their own customs. As long as they bring in the money, that's all that matters. So there's no need to camouflage themselves to imitate white Englishness. They just have to have money and wealth and that's it. That's what I've seen.
But that's exactly what the empire was about. The Commonwealth there was posts where the idea was Britain would get the wealth, and I think there was probably a few when it comes to the Commonwealth, they had cultural links or ties where they had similar governments, similar driving on left side of the road, that kind of stuff. But other than that, you're right. They could build their own culture, and that was fine as long as they submit to the Queen, as long as they could bow to the Queen or bow to the King.
So they almost take it as like a sense of pride in the UK when they have these people coming in here and almost embracing UK culture. They don't really see it as a threat.
They won't see it as a threat as long as you're bringing in some type of capital. You know what I mean? So let's say an Indian or African comes in, wears a certain attire, they're dressed like their culture, but they're the richest person in Mumbai, you know, they're the billionaire, but they dress as, you know how the Arabs wear their
Shakes.
drapes,
Shakes,
the the sheikh, the red and white top.
Yeah.
They have wealth. No one is gonna expect them to change and wear a suit. You know, like Britain acknowledges that these people have an attachment to wealth that they want. So it's like, don't imitate us. Just, you know, bring in the wealth.
Yep.
You know what I
Let me
mean?
ask you
We'll
this
shake
about
your
the UK.
hand.
Let me
Yeah.
ask you this about the UK, right? Because in America, right, you all see how there's this by young black kids, right? There's like this infatuation with like athletes and rappers and entertainers and all that.
Right.
Yep.
But what you see is that those rappers, right? And I want to know if it's similar in the UK, where like a lot of those, like we just talked about, the boule who kind of like separate themselves and go off. You know, a lot of those athletes and rappers, right? They still stay connected with the communities in a way that, let's say, a black man that became a surgeon or reached started a private equity firm or reached levels of success, you know what I'm saying? The upper levels of success that would be comparable to those athletes. And it could be, say, more easily attainable than becoming an athlete or entertainer, because that's like the chances of that is almost like hitting the lotto if you look at the amount of people that come out in the draft. But being as though becoming an athlete on the outside, just because of that accessibility, because you'll always know that athlete who comes back into the community and do different things and make it a point maybe to make rounds in school. But whereas the professional class of black people, once they make it and they leave, unless you're related to them, you don't see them no more. Like the kid, it's rare where if somebody can grow up in the same estates as somebody who became a doctor, but those kids from that estate will never know who he is unless they're related to him. You think that plays a part in like why so many black people go into certain does that same dynamic happen in the UK?
I feel like touching on it, but YMS, do you have something to
Go
add to
ahead.
that? I've got a few.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, this is very special. What's very special about America is that when a person earns wealth, you know, whether it's from being an athlete, entertainer, rapper, is that, you know, they have to remember their roots. You know, you came from this neighborhood, like, you know, represent us.
You got a rep for the hood.
In the UK, it's more like, yeah, in a way, and there's good sense to that. In the UK, what you have is, if you make it, we're going to use very specific examples here. If you're a musician or an athlete and you become so mainstream that you're touring Europe, like if I mention a name like Tiny Temper or even Stormzy now, you're not really attached to a neighborhood. I mean, you can always come back and represent, but there's no feeling of, oh, you have to give back, because at the end of the day, you know, it doesn't really reflect on them in a way. It's like they made it out because, again, the UK is a class system. We place more emphasis on a class system. Once you make it out, you're in a different level of communication. I used to listen to a lot of rappers back in the day, like Dizzy Rascal, what's his name, Ish Skepta and his brother JME, and these guys, like, they're kind of like very well known in the UK and parts of Europe, where they might do gigs in all these weird towns in the UK, and it's like, I've never heard of them, and just like, but they're known everywhere else. But they're somewhere else. They're not attached to their ends, you know. They're not attached to their hood anymore. No one's expecting them to come back. That's the thing. Like, no one's looking at Tiny Temple like, oh, he's so cool, you know, we need him to represent, because
this is what I was saying.
He's mainstream now.
Yeah, this is what I was saying in my monologue, my soliloquy about. I'd use a talented 10th as an example, but just in general, the top 10%, whether it's education wise or athletes wise, a lot of them, they leave. They don't have any sort of allegiance to
attachments. Nope.
Absolutely. Now I think the people who are there will probably have more attachment than they would have attachment to us. So we will still be like, oh yeah, he's from here, he's from there, or he's from there. So we have an attachment, but we're not like, oh yeah, you need to help us. And that's why, again, I've always said this about the UK, for black people at least, the talented of us, they always leave, and there's always like a model, and it helps it just basically fuels the ever widening gap of when it comes to black Brits who are homegrown, and their attainment, their assessment is different than being black and abroad. It's just different.
Yeah.
Would you say that they have a black community in the UK? Is there such thing as? I mean, I understand that there's places
Compared
where,
to the
but is
US?
that community aspect to it?
I mean, I wouldn't really call it that. It's fractured at best. And
Nah.
forget the numbers. I know the numbers aren't the same, but I wouldn't call it that. I think we're trying. I think, if in all honesty, we think we're trying to get there. But no.
Can I say something?
You don't have anything comparable to like Atlanta, where like black, quote unquote, people like congregate towards, and
South London.
Brixton, people would say certain pockets of London would have specific,
Birmingham,
like Brixton or Peckham,
Bristol.
But
we
don't have a historical like link to these towns, because if you look back at these places, there's more other groups in there now. There's more like Eastern Europeans or Bangladeshi, Asian people living there. So it's like, compared to like in America, where you have specific towns and places where black people historically were there. Yeah, because of even the segregation era, where there's an across the track where that's where the white town is, and then you got the black town on the other side. We don't have that. We've never had that in the UK. So we can't even claim a place like this is our place. Like we've always been here, because we migrate so often. I'm saying even like in South London, things are changing. It's not even just black people,
Well, this is it, because of gentrification and what they're doing. That they're moving everyone. Well, the classes.
Yes, gentrification is at a faster rate in the UK than if you describe it in America. It happens so quickly. Money flows in and out, and people are being scattered throughout the UK. Like there's no alignment, no link to a neighborhood, no hood in places in the UK.
Well, yeah, I suppose.
But
in that sort
I think that'll probably be the biggest difference with our talented tent. Whereas when they go, if they can't make it no further, then they always know they have like the black community where they can come back to and take up positions, maybe become a mayor or just, sit at the top of. I won't say sit at the top of, but they can come back to. So that's when you'll catch them.
But I suppose for us though, what we've not done is even establish that. So what normally happens with other communities who are ethnic minorities, I take the South Asians, is a lot of them have set up shop in certain areas where now it is known as an Asian community. It is known as a South Asian community, like Leicester. If everyone going to Leicester inside the city centre, if anyone goes there, I'm sorry, even though it's historically been white since, obviously because UK, UK is such an old nation compared to US. The US baby compared to UK. The UK's been around since day.when. So it's such the
Romans
established, absolutely the Romans, such an established nation. But even now, you have certain pockets in the UK where for South Asians, they have taken over, set up shop, and it's now known as a South Asian territory. And whereas for us, we seem to be more prone to not having that established situation.
Were they before you all? Did the Indians come before?
No, they came. A lot of them came either just after, but really around the same time. So it's not as if they've had a head start. No, not at all. We were black people, one of the first groups. We were one of the first groups to be here. So we've been there, and some people say we've been here since Tudors and that kind of stuff. But no, we've been here around the same time. So they can't. We don't have time. They don't have time on us on their side.
They have the culture.
There's more of There's more of them. There's a bit more of them. They tend to have more kids and culturally different. Yeah.
So they culturally keep themselves. That's the thing. Black people, we like to similarly integrate a lot more. Whereas there's other groups. Their culture, a lot of time it could be to do with their faith, but they would really keep to themselves, and it shows. But again, on a positive situation, that's how they have these communities where if you've ever been in an Asian community, you know it just by driving through. You know it. You don't even need to take 2 seconds. You know exactly where you are. That's how powerful it is because of their cultural upbringing. It's so powerful. If you ever go to some places in the UK, you know exactly where you are just by just the smell. You can smell like a mile off.
Think it's an inferiority complex? Do you think us as black people have like an inferiority complex where we feel as though we have to assimilate almost for validation, like to validate our success?
I would say no, but
I mean, God, I probably
Can I
think
delve in?
yes, possibly, but it all depends on who you ask. And this is it, isn't it? Because some people say no, but when I look at certain practices, I think there must be something going on if these practices seem to be happening more with black folk. That's how I see it when it comes to some of these people. I think there is a bit of a self-esteem issue that we generally have more than other communities, which is why we do what we do. That's how I think, at least.
But
Hey, have you ever?
you know how what I genuinely think is that we're just more westernized. We've allowed Western ideas to kind of teach itself in our own cultures. You know what I mean? So compared to the Asian culture, where it's either Islam, Hinduism, it's a lot more concentrated. If I have to describe it, I would use their food, like the curries and the smell of their spices, while like, let's say, Caribbean culture has a lot more infusion of different, Western cuisines. African culture as well has similar there's something about being black in the UK that allows us to assimilate without even realizing it. Like, we're not, if the majority of us are Christian, we're more likely to join with the English way of life because they're more Christian. Yeah.
I think
But then black
and the
Muslims are less likely to.
Yeah.
But they'll assimilate with the Arabs and the
Oh yeah.
Southeast Asians or whatever. Because that happens in America. Like a lot of black Muslims, you see them, they start wearing the Arab garb
the
or
hijab.
whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like over here we have a huge pocket of Somali community, and they would more likely align probably with the Arabs, the Asians, because of the religion Muslim it's more than just a religion in my mind. It's like a whole culture, and they would align more with the Arabs because of that. Even though, let's be honest, Arabs will call them, I thought, was it kafir, or they'll call them some names to let you know you are not like us. Was it? What did he say? Did he say?
I think it's that, but some ways Somalis don't see themselves the same way as us. So in a way, they're like in between. They get away. It's being Muslim is enough for them to align themselves with Asians and Arabs.
Hey, have any of you seen the movie called It's an old movie called The Psychology of Selling to the Negro?
I've not.
No.
It's an old movie, maybe from the 70s, right? But it was done by economists, and they were just talking about the spending patterns of black people and how to market to them, essentially, right? And they said,
I think I've watched it. Yeah.
And they say black people spend the most money per any group, right, on luxury brands and brand recognition, whatever it may be. And it's a line in there, right, that stood out to me all this time. And they said, he said the only thing that the black consumer wants, they're thinking for, is recognition. And that's why I asked about the inferiority complex or whatever, but this is more so from an African American perspective, coming out of segregation or whatever. And you've seen how after desegregation, how we've ran into white suburbs or whatever, and essentially left our neighborhoods. Like, as much as they talk about like Africa in the brain drain, like, people outside of America don't realize that African Americans have a brain drain in America.
No, I can imagine. Yeah, 100%.
So that's how you ghettos stay in like a perpetual state of just low income, low education, because the people with the education, they run the first chance they get, So it's like the kids surrounded by just low life, so to speak, in a way, in a lot of places, not everywhere, but you know what I mean?
No, 100% agree. And I remember reading something where this was after the riots when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. died, and how beforehand you would have doctors and lawyers, because of the segregation, but they'll be in the same area as somebody who's not a doctor or lawyer. So black people see people of different occupation level, class level, so they can see it and grab it. But now, like you said, after that's happened and the brain drain and people going, you can imagine it's, again, the less of us are left behind because everyone else has gone off to, live with, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, so to speak. There's one question I wanted to put on the chat. I've been wanting to hopefully try and get back to the topic a little bit, but not back topic, but I wanted to really delve into this topic because Vincent, this is one of the things I was talking about in regards to maybe that's how I suppose the talented 10th think when they get to a certain stage. But I want to get
bougie.
This is it.
He's bougie.
But this is a problem, isn't it? This is a problem. Let's be honest, because his comment is, I mean no offense, but if you're black and trying to aspire to do better and reach for the stars, you're definitely going to have to separate yourself from the black community. And I myself do that. Now, surely that is reason why, again, when I talked about, because even in my life, I'm like, I don't have a mentor, to be fair to you. And I'm like, I should have one, but I don't. And I want a black mentor. I'm just going to be frank. Me personally, I would love to get a black mentor. And this is one of the things where I think he also said in the chat that, and you said that your mentors, I don't know about if you said this to Duke, if you mentioned it, but your mentors aren't white. They're not black people. And I would really, really would love to have a black person to mentor you. But would we fall into this trap of, once you've made it, these black people, like, I'm separating myself from the black community, you ain't like me, da 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 da. I mean, do you see that as a kind of a problem? I'm not saying you're but I had to discuss it, I had to bring it up.
Yeah. With me, when it comes to my mentors, majority of them have been black because
family
it's through friends of family friends, right? I will add one more thing too. For example, like 6-7 years ago, my mom joined this sisterhood, like in this neighborhood we live in, and it's filled with a lot of like wealthy African or even West Indian women in this, black women group, and it's based in North London, and they're very closed, pocketed group. Right. And it's not that they work with the black community; they work with themselves. Like this is a family of maybe about 60 mothers, wives that sort of connect, and they will, use WhatsApp group or any form of communication, and then they will gather, have barbecues. It's almost similar to what happens in America, where the wealthy elite have their own societies for their children. And so that's what really exists everywhere. And it's natural in a way. What Vincent says is separating himself from the quote unquote black community is to sort of seclude their own sort of system where we're wealthy black people. So we're going to cultivate our way of thinking, our wealth amongst ourselves, rather than trying to distribute it to the rest of the community in a way. It's almost as if it's their class system. That's why I've embraced it. I've accepted that's how what exists.
Because, this was going to say, because think about that. That's, right? That's knowledge, resources that's closed off. And I'm like, so obviously, of course, they can do what they want to do, but do you not see that as that's a roadblock for people who, again, just because you're born in a situation that you couldn't control, you now closed off pretty much because they have now said, that's it, I'm isolating myself. And a lot of time I think it's because when they use that word black community, it's a derogative way, as opposed to just, you know what I mean? It's a derogative word.
It is the community.
As opposed to what it is. Yeah. And that's what happens, isn't it? So it's like, surely that's a problem. Surely that's going to cause us or people who's in outside of that problems.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Does this dynamic exist in the UK, right? Because when you look at a lot of the woke, the quote unquote woke people in America, and who's at the forefront of a lot of these movements and spearhead it and keep this perpetual like victim, we gotta fight white supremacy and all that, it's really the elite black people that push that message onto the masses to propaganda purposes, to pretty much propel them into white spaces so that you can get all these different diversity programs within corporations that they'll get, but the lower blacks at the bottom get nothing and just stay in this perpetual state of victimhood and crying about white supremacy on behalf of the black elites who reap all the benefits of it. So now you just have a perpetual message of that. I mean, people that make full careers of that. The Congressional Black Caucus, if you look at all our black politicians, the only message that they can push to black people, it's not no type of economic empowerment or doing nothing for them, but just a perpetual of everybody's racist and you oppressed and this and that and that and that, and get all type of laws passed. They can sit in office for 4 years and do nothing but cry about racism. But they've reached the pinnacle of success in society, but they just need that message to keep the 90% down narrative. Screaming at to solidify their position within white establishments.
See now this is where it gets really interesting, because what happens is it's the same thing in the UK, but the thing is we have to acknowledge that there's two different elites of black people. The liberal elites and the conservative elites. That's what we'll call them. But you might have the Republicans and the Democrats. So they align themselves based on the left and the right. So
But
a
the
lot of the
Republicans
right
just
wing.
jump ship and leave.
Yes, but that's the thing. It's almost it's just like our conservatives. Republicans see it as we are preserving ourselves. We don't want government to be involved in trying to help the black community. We're just doing what we need to do. That's how they see it. Of course, that's a sort of theoretic way of thinking. While the liberals believe that the government has to be involved in helping the community. Like the liberal elites believe that the government have to invest in the people, but not to themselves. They don't want to have to get involved. They want the government to help the community. And if they don't, well, we'll just take the resources that we get from the government. Like exactly what you're saying. You got Kamala Harris, her group. They play this game where, we're campaigning for the people, but when things don't get done, we'll just, dream it away. We'll talk about reparations now, but then we'll just, make people forget. And then now I'm a vice president. So that's the game they play as well in the UK. We've got the conservative elites and the liberal elites where you won't really notice it. But if you look at our politicians who are more right-leaning and left-leaning, they speak the same tune that you hear in America. But with the conservative elites that are black, they keep to themselves the same way. They believe in the class system. They accept it. While the liberals are trying to throw this woke agenda and campaigning this and that to change the system. Like they're not doing anything special, but they'll still keep to themselves. And they will continue to do that to preserve their wealth, to practice nepotism. They're not trying to save hundreds of thousands of people because to them, that's too much work. So they will try and get the government involved.
But it's almost as though you got to keep them suppressed and in this state of perpetual victimhood in order to solidify your spot at the top. Because if black people became politically literate and savvy, then the black politicians will be. Imagine how many people will lose a job. Your Al Sharptons and all these black politicians who get by doing nothing. So it's like, it's crazy.
That's the thing. With the liberal elites, this is what I would definitely distinguish: is that they know that if they play this black leadership role, they can gain more voice, they can gain more seats in the positions of power and somehow make themselves known. You've got Kamala Harris who tries to represent that, and she's kind of made it to that point by making noise, even though she's been detrimental to the African American community for decades. I would say, I don't know, some people might not agree with me, but we have the equivalent, Diane Abbott. If her party was in power, she would have taken advantage of that too. She came from a borough that I was actually raised in for the first few years of my life, a borough that is crime ridden, and she talks about how Britain needs to change and everything, but she hasn't changed her borough in any way. She pretends like nothing's going on, and so she wants to play this opposition against the Conservative Party, and she even ran to lead the Labour Party. I'm looking at this crazy woman like, are you sure you know what you're talking about? You sound stupid. Like compared to Kamala Harris, she's a failure in politics, but she still makes a lot of noise, and she'll talk the race game. She plays the race game a lot when she doesn't do her job in her constituents. So again, parallels between America and the UK.
David Lammy as well. I mean, I know you mentioned, but David Lammy for me,
yes.
Who, I mean, every single time you see him, he's always talking about something like that, and I'm like, he's been elected in his borough for how long has it been now? I'm just like, I don't know. The only reason why these people are even in a position is purely to peddle whatever they're peddling, because they can only work on the left. But they've been there for ages. But I'm going to say this though as well. There's a new rise of on the right who do the exact same thing it's the same coin on the opposite end. And this is what I mean when I said the conservatives, because they're not conservatives like Priti Patel or Kemi Badenoch, who they're elitism. I mean, Kemi Badenoch she was born in a middle class society, against a white husband. Priti Patel, she's like a billionaire white husband. And I'm like this. They also say they use the race game, but to almost I'm here, you're down here.
Against,
Don't work.
yeah,
To work against a lot of black people and a lot of their issues, which are legitimate, because there are legitimate issues that we do have to discuss.
So like
But
the
this
Candace
situation-
Owens.
Yes, perfect. That's it. And we have a lot of them
Yeah.
over here in the UK who some of them are like social media commentators in the news who will get their spotlight. I'm thinking like Calvin Robinson. He's a mixed race guy. I don't know if you know Calvin Robinson, but a lot of them are propped on there to basically the opposite, which is we've seen the left at their game. We're not going to play the same game in reverse, and they're only there to basically buy their right wing employers to say stomp them down, prod them down. But they're in this privileged situation because again, their classism, their wealth, they're in that situation, but they it's ring fenced. It's a crazy situation that I see from both angles, which is just at the end of the day, we're just pawns in this game, aren't we?
Right. But hey man, I enjoyed the conversation, man. I'm finna run for a bit, but I'll catch you on the next one. But this was an interesting topic just to see the dynamics between the UK and the US. And the funny thing is, on the last note, the only time I seen David Lammy, right, it was a clip of him, a white woman debating him about you could never be English, right?
All right.
And
Yeah.
Yes.
and it was funny, like seeing him beg and plead with the woman, and she's like,
I am
"No."
English. It's sad.
Like you're almost suffering an identity crisis. It's like, no, you're Jamaican, you're black, or whatever. Like, I guess there's a class of white people in the UK that are never. So let me before I go though, like, how do you all see that, like, as being black in the UK? Do you see yourself as English?
So what used to take place is a lot of black folk would use the word British, never English. And a lot of it is because they don't know the reason why it's called Britain. But it's kind of complicated for outsiders, but let me try and make it as clear as I can. There is no nation called England, Scotland, Wales, because it's not a sovereign nation. Britain is the nation. Britain is technically so under nationality, you're British because
United Kingdom.
Yeah, United Kingdom. That's the reason why we're called British. English is just, a country within the nation of Britain or United Kingdom or Great Britain, or however you want to distinguish it. But mostly we saw English as being white. So when everyone used to say English, they white. But when they use the word British, that sounds more inclusive. It don't mean anything, but it just sounds more inclusive because of the colonial.
It's like calling yourself an American.
Yeah. So we use that as a term. So we'll be Black British, or some people will say they're Black British African, or whatever it may, Black British Nigerian, Black British Barbadian, Black British Jamaican. But it's that Britishness. That's what they would glean to. So that's why when that woman says you can't be English, she meant it as you can't be white. That's what she was trying to tell David Lammy. You are not ethnically English, which is white. But David Lammy, because again, this is the psychology, he wanted so badly. Really, it's not about the English, it's about being white, because you can be black in English because you're born in England, but it was more code. You are not white, but he wanted to be, engrafted into that white. He wanted it. That's what it was. That was the killer, because when he made a comparison to the Caribbean and he used Barbados as an example. Barbados has so many. It has Europeans, it has Indians, because there's a lot of Indians in the Caribbean, like Trinidad and Tobago and things like that. But you know what they call themselves? They call themselves like Chinese Jamaican. They call themselves Indian Jamaican. They make a distinction. I like, David had, but again, that's because he really wanted to be so badly, for me, white. That's what that whole conversation screamed to me.
Yeah, just to let you know, Bo, we were all embarrassed when we heard that. I don't know, a few people might have been agreeing with him, but majority of us are like, yeah, and even on the right, I've seen people who are like, well, we shouldn't have to fight this fight. British is enough. We don't need extra. Like, you know what I mean? He needs to relax. Even though he's on the left side of politics, it's like, why are you fighting this for? Whatever. Like, for me, when it came to that, I've rejected the identity English. And the only reason why I had to reject it was when I was in Ireland. People would say, oh, you're English. I'm like, oh, I'm British. But they're like, no, because they're Irish and I'm from England. Yep. They will identify me as English. So I understood that, okay, it depends where I am. I might have to emphasize that I'm English in living, but I will identify as British first. I'm not ready to claim anything else. I've got enough identities. So
Right. It's a
like, what's
weird
the point?
dynamic.
Yeah.
It's a weird dynamic because
Yeah.
in the U.S., like you all mentioned, right, being called American,
Yeah.
people automatically associated with being white. But like me, like
Hmm.
I identify as being American, right? Like the whole ADOS
Mhm.
movement, right? Like I support that 100%. I don't know if you are familiar with that, but the
Yep,
whole
yep.
American descendants
Yeah.
of slavery, right? Like I support that or not. But there's so many. But I think in the U.S. it's almost reversed, where there's like this mental health component where African people they're so against being labeled as American, even though they've been here since the inception of America, fought in every war and
Mm.
everything else, and look for all these different identities as far as being African or whatever else they claim to
American.
be, whether it's Hebrews, Jews. It's like it's
Funny enough,
crazy.
Mm.
I'll say, Bo, outside of the US, we see you as American. So, do you know when if you're an American,
Yeah.
if you're white, I'll say you're American. I wouldn't use that trope of like African American. I never understood it. Like when I was growing up, the technical term for me would be Black British, Afro Caribbean, or African Caribbean. It is a weird one, but
Mm.
I would, for you, bro, I would always think of you as a Black American. But I
Right.
always understood that you
Mm.
guys were like African American, Negroes, that kind of stuff. So I get it. But for us, or outsiders, at least for me, I would always still consider yourself an
Mm.
American. Or just you're Black American, you're white American. That's how I see it.
Yeah, it's a
Mm.
real identity crisis.
Mm.
Maybe on the reverse in the UK, but it's a real identity crisis for some black people, man, just
Oh
living
yeah,
as a
we got
minority in white countries. But I enjoyed the conversation, man. I definitely got subscribed and waiting for your next show, brother.
no, I appreciate it. Thanks for coming up.
Yeah,
Always
man.
welcome.
Much
Always
respect.
welcome. Have a good one. Have a good one. But yeah,
Much respect.
absolutely. But at this time, it's a great little I suppose little break just to say what's up to chat. I've not been paying attention one iota. But Vincent, I most certainly what's up, Myth Twist? How's it going? I'm not saying hello to yourself. If you are, make sure you like the stream if you have just come in. But one thing I did want to speak to you, Vincent, about, and we can have a chat about this, is just the psychology of it all. Because this is where, when I listen to Vincent, and he has that, and this is one thing which I found a lot of wannabe elite or elite black people have, and it's that condescending vibe of no respect. Because one of the things in the comment section he did make was that he doesn't have a lot of respect for black men. I understand historically, due to how you've interacted with a lot of them. I get it. But I'm just like, man, a lot of us, a lot of these elites, they have this viewpoint, they have this sort of this opinion where it's just like, let's be honest, everything that's white or close to white is right, and it's just like, man, it's such a shame. It's just a shame because, again, Vincent, I'm hoping you, brother, would you're going to do a lot of really, really great things. So the last thing I want you to have is a situation where now you've made it, you've sort of washed your hands and you just cocoon yourself to this small segment of people who are just, highfalutin, pretentious SOBs who flipping, don't know nothing. It's just one of those situations where I'm like, man, if you don't rub shoulders, you will never ever see him at all. It's just, I really wanted to have a conversation about just your viewpoints on that, because we talked about this, the Duke on KB's channel, about having a
Right.
black middle class and separation, but there's obviously downside to it, as you've been mentioned with the bourgeoisie in the UK and how they cocoon themselves. And it's like there's a danger there of we're going to do the exact same thing we are, but there's that danger, isn't there? It's frightening.
Yeah. So
Do you agree with that kind of concept, though? I mean, I don't think I've really. If you've said anything, do you agree with that concept?
no, I've always been an observer. I've always just witnessed from a distance rather than have my own critique. It's more like, okay, they exist. This is how they are. They keep themselves separate. I mean, in my mind, I've always thought where my career is going now, I might end up rubbing shoulders with them just because of my own hard work and, my own connections, that I'm going to be around that. But because I know where I'm from, where I grew up, I would have friends who weren't, so well off anyway. So I've never felt like I needed to change. But my viewpoint, I'm not sure. I'll never place it as if the way I see it, like, no one is responsible for another person. Like, if they feel like they just want to have a regular life in the UK or wherever and raise a family and they don't want to have to get involved in anything,
Yep.
that's fine. That's their choice. But I feel like a lot of them, especially being black in the UK and being a minority within a minority, being wealthy and maybe be the only black person in the room because you're in a more higher upper class, a lot of them would consider, hey, maybe I should help someone who looks like me get up. They do a few things, like a lot of philanthropic work to help black students get through to the top schools, Russell Group schools. Some of them have that passion in them, being African or Caribbean. There's this sort of attachment into seeing more faces that look like us. You know, it's there are a minority, but a lot of them would rather just keep to themselves, and we can't really force it. That's just what I've noticed from them, is that, hey, like, they're in this situation and they're just aside surviving like the rest of us, but they're just wealthier, you know.
I mean, surviving.
Yeah.
I want that word, but I get what you're saying.
So yeah, just existing in their own, you know, sphere of, you know, that's just what I've noticed, is that they're not trying to avoid us or the majority. They just know that it's gonna take more effort if they have to build bridges to connect other people. But there are a few who are prepared to do that, you know, who are more aggressive. What I don't like is when they get too liberal, where they turn it into some type of identity politics. Like, you're doing it without virtual signaling. You're doing it out of your goodness of your heart that you just want us to practice group economics. Yeah, that's it. Not, oh, let's make it political and fight the system. No. You're benefiting from the system. Practice nepotism at a larger scale. You know what I mean? That's how I picture it. It's like, what would you do if you were wealthy in that position? What is maybe the first steps you'll do to help people who are below you? You know, what have you thought of before I give my reason?
That's a very good question, because I was going to ask this question to you about,
if you were them,
what would I do? And depending what industry I'm in, that's probably the key thing. So I think for most people, or how I would do it, is if I'm in an industry where I have a lot of knowledge, expertise, the first thing I look to do is try and create pathways for people to get into this almost the same industry that I'm in, or help get to a certain situation where they can be successful, particularly if in an industry which doesn't have, as you said, a lot of us who look like us in these high places. One thing I'll look to do first is, I'm working in this arena. Let me try and help. Let me try and give guidance, or let me just be visible. I think one of the first things which we aren't as good as is just being visible, to say, I am here, I am this, such and such, and then becoming a mentor, and then this. Because this is something I just be personal. I've never had a mentor. I'm like, can I mentor somebody that I've never? I think I need to be a mentor. I need to be mentee and then mentor somebody else. But it's just that case of, I need to be more visible, to say, I am in this field, I'm in this area. Come find me, come and seek me, so you can get my knowledge. That would be the first thing I would do if I was wealthy, and then it goes from there and there and there.
Right.
What would you do?
Oh yeah. So that's very clear. That's very good. To be honest, that's on the same line of what I would do, and that's what I plan on doing. I see myself being in the position to create change, like 10 years from now. And it comes down to how I've already had that exposure. You said you didn't have a mentor. I did. I had a few, like if it was either through family, friends, or through the church. So if I'm active in a church and I'm a grown man, I know that I could just, ask the congregation, hey, does anyone have kids who want to maybe shadow me and enter my career? Like, hey, I'm open to that. So it's almost like on a smaller level and start from there. But I mean, growing up in London, in the UK, there have been sort of programs that are very specific. They would say, oh, we want to promote more black students into STEM. And so we will do this, we will do that. I forgot his name. He's involved in politics. This Jamaican guy, he has this program called Geniuses or something, where he focuses on black students who are smart in school. I forgot his name, but he does a program where he kind of promotes it, and he has a few connections. And you find these programs, they do exist in these cities. They just kind of want to extract the best of the best from the community at a young age,
which is fair,
to build them up. Yeah. So it's a lot of work, and I think maybe that's why a lot of people are hesitant
But
to
you know
get
what?
involved. But with the passion
I was thinking about
that
what you
comes
said.
with it,
I was thinking about that, and I think maybe it's how we look at things. Because you know what it is. I think we probably feel
yeah,
like we have a burden. Again, that savior mentality where we have to be the leader
right.
of the entire Black community, as opposed to actually to be a mentor. You're helping, one-on-one people. You help people.
It's on a
It,
small level.
Absolutely. And on that small level, if it makes obviously a bigger level because you know what I mean? I think
Mhm.
sometimes we look at it from we want a grandioso solution to everything. It's like,
Grand,
you know what I
yeah.
mean? It's never going to be that way. As opposed to, can we set either
Mm.
two things? You can just do it in your little sort of level, just as a smaller scale, or can we set up the foundations
Mhm.
where it becomes something bigger, like an institution? You talk about programs. That's a good thing. I mean, again,
Mhm.
if you have some sort of programs you can set up in place or you can sort out, it just sets the foundation there. I think we look for the solution, or we want to be the face of the thing that's going to change everything. It's never going to happen, because at the end of the day, there's accountability,
Oh,
responsibility. Um,
yes,
so yeah,
yeah,
I think I know what you're saying when we say work. I just think sometimes we think, I think we don't think on the same level that we need to think on sometimes.
yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah,
100%.
and just to touch on before I go, just to touch on how I guess some people like Vincent's comment was more like outrageous to people, like um not wanting to associate with the Black community. It's almost as if like in a way I kind of understand why he would say that. Some people just feel like already having a bad rep because of the stereotypes you get, like
Yeah.
going to certain schools. Like if you went to a grammar school or boarding school, I've spoken to some of the guys who were, black, who've said that, being the only Black person in school, they had to sort of represent something. And sometimes it's like they don't want that much weight on them. It's like, I don't want to have to associate with that all the time. Vincent, for example, said he had the experience growing up in like a South London school, and how he was treated differently when he moved to a better school, and seeing that maybe exposed him to something that maybe threatened him, like the idea that the working class of the Black community just don't like him because of how he sounds or how he talks. It's like already there are distinct differences between us because of class. You're gonna be mocked if you sound a certain way, if you act a certain way. You're called a neek, or you're bounty. These are insults that come from people who are less well off than someone who is posh. And that's the sort of the class divide that already exists in the UK, and it's like we're fitting ourselves in the exact same trends. The richer whites look down on the poorer whites,
Oh,
and
100%.
they call them chavs, and then they mock the posh for being sensitive, or just not they don't handle things aggressively enough. Just that idea, that perspective is replicated in the Black community now at a smaller scale because there's less of us. But I think that's what's very distinct here in the UK compared to America. So yeah,
No, no,
class is major here, man.
no, I agree. And you mentioned a point which I wanted to touch
Yeah.
on. So no, thanks for that. And how with
Yeah.
Vincent, and how, because he was treated badly by, as you said, I mean, you made that distinction between working class or lower class Blacks, but unfortunately, what happens with a lot of Black people is they don't make that distinction. And by the time they get on, they see
Yeah.
all Black people pretty much the same, outside of maybe their
Mm.
handful of people who fit the same mold or fit the same template that maybe they've come from. And therefore, that what's drive a lot of the wedge between, again, when it comes back to, do we have these people visible and available to help other like-minded people, or even people who just want to be on the come up, but they're like, no, you come from here, you must be like this, you're that, you must be like that. And it's like, well, hold on a second, that's unfair to put what took place in you onto somebody else. It's unfair for you to have all that
Right.
resentment and anger to the whole pretty much Black community. And again, it extends to so much things. You talk about being neat, but it's like relationships, dating, where again you see it, where whenever I talk to Black guys about certain things, like, well, it's because I was treated like this. It's like, okay. Or Black women, I was treated by Black men like this. Do you mean 2 Black men, or 3 Black men out of how many? Do you mean 2 Black women or 3 Black women out of how many? And it's like, unfortunately, like you said, white people do these same things, but it's like maybe they don't see it as a white thing, see it as you're a middle class posh twat. You're a lower class chap. You know, they see it like that. We would extend it not just class but to race, and it hurts us so much more because we are a minority, and that's a minority of a minority. So it's
right.
It's crazy, but absolutely. But myth twist. You say I'm with Vincent divide it all, but have you heard the expression, "A house divided cannot stand"? And if there's anything about black folk, and especially understanding the continent of Africa, because I've been kind of getting into the space of that. There's a repatriation space that goes on. I don't know if anyone's really hooked up to that space, but there's so much. There's already a divide with Africa anyway because they got tribal links and ethnic tribes, and I'm just like, there's so much situation that goes on there. It's just the reason why Africa's in the situation is, in my humble opinion, because they don't see each other as pretty much the same. It's like you can have somebody of a different tribe and they think they're a completely different race. I'm like, I don't know. I understand we have to divide maybe characteristics of certain things, but man, I don't know, man. I don't know. I think there needs to be a sense of I won't say blind loyalty, but I don't know. I just don't agree with that whole thing of divided at all, man. I think it's just, yeah, it's been hurting us for too long. I just yeah, it's just crazy. But yeah, one.
You know what? For example, if I was going to add in something real quick. If Vincent, for example, went to my sixth form, which had a lot of grammar school kids, and they had a lot of black people as well, he wouldn't have this perception that the black community are, you know, different to him, because for some reason the school I went to had a higher accumulation of kids who grew up well off that were black as well. So it was a weird experience because I never saw it before, but it made me think that, okay, there's more to black UK that I never knew existed. So I'm guessing if he was exposed to that too, he wouldn't have sort of this strong feeling against the black community in the UK. But I don't know how percentage wise how it looks like when it comes to working class blacks, like how much percentage wise. Of course, them the majority, but in London, I don't know how it looks, you know. So
I don't know. That's
just an example there.
But yeah, I've around middle class, working class people, white, black, whatever. And I mean, I understand the whole struggle it is if you're, you know, different or whatever it is, just because that's just how it is.
Around that.
But I know, you know what I mean? So I would have loved to have seen a lot more black people who had wealth and that kind of stuff, but I never grew up around that kind of stuff. So it is what it is, isn't it? And even though some of my family members are a bit better off, it's like a bit better off. It's almost like instead of being one paycheck away from brokenness, it's probably a couple or a few maybe. But no, I get it. And a lot of times it's just where you rub shoulders with and your outlook on life. It's solely dependent on how you're raised and where you're brought up and who you rub shoulders with. So yeah, 100%.
Easily.
But
one more thing. When it comes to class, you mentioned Africa. When it comes to you mentioned tribalism in Africa. When it comes to class in Africa, it's a very different thing. It's almost as if people of lower class who grew up in the village look up to wealthier people. Like they might mock them, but they wish they were them in a way. So in a way, classism is almost allowed in Nigeria. It's almost like it's a dream to look higher than you are, so they would be respectful to people who come from wealth, right? They would call you sir or mister even if you're younger than them, just because he comes from wealth. Or guy is like like sir in a way, like if you have money. So it's like in Africa there's just this idea about classism being good. I don't know how else to describe it.
Is that classism or just
embraced?
But is that just because they envy their lifestyle as opposed to it's just finance, it's just money? You know what I mean? Because
it's just money, but at the same time, knowing that their kids were brought up a certain way, they traveled the world. They have a passport with many stamps in it. They have different accents where they come back. This sort of what's the word? Showing off in a way that this is the wealth you can have if you work hard enough. That's the sort of perception you get from this sort of pyramid system in Nigeria and in other parts in Africa. It's almost like a caste system, but the currency is it's money
Yeah.
in a way. Yeah.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. Now I've been seeing some of the chat, so I just wanted to kind of ask the chat this, and I suppose if you were where you wanted to be in life, chat, would you be open to mentoring somebody who's, let's be honest, maybe come from a lower background, or just anyone in general? But press a 1 in chat if that's something that you actually are willing to do, or whether you actually do it already, because that's the ultimate aim of, or the ultimate question of the live stream today about mentors and mentorships and leaders and guides. Once you've made it to the promised land, once you've made it to the situation that you're in, would you be willing to do that kind of stuff? Is that something that you say yay or nay? So press a 1 if you will. Okay. Now
That's good.
I just want to ask this question as well. Does press a 2 in the chat? Yeah, I was gonna say, does anyone do it now? So press a 2 in the chat. Does anyone actually do it now? Because that's another thing. Does anyone actually do it now? Because I'd be interested to see how many people do it. But what I mean more of a tangible situation where you're actually, actually doing it. You're actually in a situation where you may have marked out a plan. Yeah, I won't say that. I don't know. I don't agree with that, Fiona. I don't think if you're a line manager and you're a mentor, I just think you're a line manager. There's a difference between a line manager and a mentor, or like a guide or a coach. A line manager will have certain responsibilities. Let's just put it that way. Or they should do as a line manager, but that's really a lot of times for their own line manager, isn't it? So they're doing the right things because they have their own line manager, don't they? So let's be fair.
Out of work hours.
Crazy, but a lot of times you have to have your monthly one-to-ones, that kind of stuff, all that kind of other stuff. But cool. But no, thanks to do it for coming up. I didn't want to go too long because I appreciate everyone's got time and it's getting a bit late. So I just wanted to sort of talk about the whole role of, I suppose, mentors, guidance, because I think that's what a lot of people in this space are looking for, not just some sort of father or sort of mother figure, but they're looking for something a bit more deeper than that. Because people are looking for, day-to-day flipping life advice about everything, financial advice, career advice, and most certainly dating and relationship advice. That's most certainly what people are looking for. So yeah, 100% agreed. But any final thoughts, Mr. Duke, the Duke, before I called you Mr. The Duke, before I sort of sign up?
It's something that I am passionate about. Definitely mentoring is gonna be in me when I'm prepared for it, because I had the mentor, so it's never been in my mind to not have a mentor or to not be a mentor in the future. So this is something I'll be very passionate about doing. I've discussed this with my group of friends who are also like pursuing affluency, that we would want to give back to the younger people and sort of pass on a legacy. We want to build sort of in a way without it's not even something that we plan on doing. It's almost premeditated in a way that we expected to do it. I've never seen it as something that have to be pushed to do. It's always yeah, of course, why not? So yeah.
No, you just
pro mentor in any way.
You just said something there which I want to ask about. You said that it was kind of not expected, but almost you were built for, if that makes any sense. You're almost like that was kind of Is that just because, again, I know you mentioned your family members, it kind of was something which you saw being just passed on, and it's just like you said, legacy. And that's the really good word and it's something I'm not said, that legacy there, just to pass it on and bring it all down, because that's what a lot of these things are. Not just about, we talk about wealth and finances, but advice, your all these other things, again, life experience, but it's all keyed into memories and your advice of what to do and what not to do. So yeah, that was
right. Yeah, it is a legacy. It's almost, I've always been around all these uncles or older people who've always felt the need to tell me things to learn from, and I've always been like, yeah, this is what I have to do eventually. So that's how I've seen it. I guess I've been lucky to have that, and so I'll carry that on. It's almost a cultural thing. So I'll definitely accept.
No, 100%, 100%. And one thing, I don't know how I didn't talk about this, but would you accept some advice from somebody who's not successful? So someone who's probably not advice, someone who doesn't have a CV. Say, like, for example, I guess you want to be a doctor, but that person's not a doctor, but they're trying to advise you on how to be a doctor. how would you seriously take that advice as opposed to somebody who is a doctor?
It's interesting. It depends on how they approach it, because I've worked in positions where I know that's not where I'm going. It's like a lower position in terms of getting work experience, and I'm around people who aren't as skilled as in terms of to give advice. But if they're older, if that like they're elders and they're just working to feed the family, I would listen in. I've always been a person to open my ears to any advice or point of view um allowed to me. That's just how I've been brought up, that to respect your elders, just like listen and take it a grain of salt if they said something that doesn't adhere to the truth. But yeah, okay, yeah, I hear you. If let's say they want to give me advice on being a doctor, but they're not a doctor, it's fine. It could be from a perspective of a patient, or you make sure you have a good character as a doctor, or make sure you do this. Like I would accept that. You know what I mean? But to teach me practical things about being a medical doctor is like certified, but okay,
I don't know.
yeah.
It's fair.
I see. Unless you think of it differently, is that how you want me to approach the question?
No, I think it's good. You approach it perfectly. I think one of the things which I know a lot of Black people look at a lot in general is, if you have finances and money, that must mean that you're someone to look up to and someone to take advice from. If you're somebody who's not got finances, let's say you're broke. Let's be honest, that's somebody who may not get the kind of appraisal, or not the kind of people who people would generally be listening to. Now, it does depend on a few factors for definite, but as a holistic, that's why a lot of times when it comes to our role models, they're always celebrities, because they have to have finances, and they have to be sometimes celebrity culture, which depending on where you're from, it can be a lot more toxic. But if you have a good family structure around you, it works slightly different. So, but no, your way is a hell of a lot more healthy in my mind, where you take it in, you may not be wise, sober advice, but you just listen, you be respectful. But some people, unless you are, flipping a millionaire, whatever it is, or unless you're not that kind of level, then your advice ain't nothing to me. Don't talk to me, don't chat to me, don't speak to me, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I see both kind of sides, if you see what I mean.
In a way, some people give advice based on their mistakes. Like if someone is homeless and giving me advice on how to avoid poverty, in a way, that's important advice too. It's like, okay, this is my experience. Don't do what I did. That's in a way advice. It's an insight to the worst case scenario, and they're in it. If a man who's been divorced 3 times says, "Oh, look for this red flag or this," it's almost in a way acceptable to take that advice, and also take advice from someone who is in a long-term marriage, for 50 years. Both people can give you insight to something that's worth listening to. Yeah, I made it sound very healthy in a way when you say it, so I get that too.
No,
advice is advice at the end of the day.
It's just a healthy, balanced way of thinking about it, because you're right. Ultimately, you can learn from everyone in terms of what not to do or what to do based on their life experience or based on what it is. So, but a lot of time you just have to try and what's the word? Be sober in how you take it in, and just make sure you're like, oh, okay. some more practical things I may not take it as much as somebody else, just because the always thing that goes to my head is, if you're this smart, how come it's not work for you? You know what I mean? I know life is not like that. It is, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, if this was how it's supposed to be, then how come you failed X amount of times? But it is what it is. You can still learn from them either way.
Yeah, from that angle, I get that if they're giving advice and it's not actually working for them, like if they're scamming you, then call it out. But I get that too. Yeah.
No, 100%. But yeah, absolutely. The Duke, thanks for being a wonderful guest as always with your insightful knowledge. I can see people have been plugging your channel in the chat, so I don't mind that, by the way. Thanks for letting me know, Myth Twist, for plugging the channel. Usually people are quite more respectful, but it's all right. I'll let you off. But I don't mind. I'm cool and stuff. But just let your boy know in future.
Thank you for having me.
But no, always good. So, but yeah, it was kind of an impromptu stream. So I don't know when the next stream is going to be. To be fair, people definitely look out for my next stream. But yeah, I just wanted to get this one off the top of my chest. I've been thinking about it for a while now with everything that's been going on in just in my life and just in the space, and thought, you know what? I think a lot of times, me personally, I do feel like I've missed in my earlier days that kind of mentor, just to be able to guide you through these little twisty narrow roads, and just I made some mistakes, and you know, life is its greatest teacher, isn't it? But it is what it is. We're here where we are now.
Indeed.
So I just wanted to get this stream out to see how important it is, because it really is important. It hella is important. And as you heard from a lot of people who are in certain spaces, when you come to the higher echelons, they have these things on lock. When it comes to networking, who they're rubbing shoulders with, don't take this stuff for granted, man. I'm telling you, it will make your life a hell of a lot easier. So if you can get in and get on, then by all means, do what you need to do. Kiss as much ass as you can do, respectfully. Keep your integrity. And that's the one last thing I wanted to talk about, actually, before I end the stream. Jeez, I feel like I'm going to say that a while. But
Okay.
and there's a lot of things I think that gets missed off when it comes to these kind of wealthy, high value conversations, which is character. And one of the things which gets missed off, particularly, let's be honest, when it comes to men, is almost you can be a prick, a demon, all these kind of things, and it almost gets blown away purely because you have made it in life, as we call it, when you're either educated, successful. And I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's just because of how they've managed to get there, but there's a stigma. I don't know if it's true, because again, I don't rub shoulders with a lot of them, but I hear things from people who are in those places, and a lot of them are just pricks. And there's one thing which I realized about this highfalutin crowds and a lot of these educated guys, and a lot of times they have problems because, let's be honest, they just character-wise, they're narcissistic, they're a prick, they're horrible, but it's like it doesn't count. I don't know if it even makes any difference to people, but as soon as you've made it, it's like character traits, it is what it is. Whereas if you're poor, you've got to be a little bit more nicer. What do you think about that kind of stuff?
I don't know where to touch on this topic. Could you give me a brief? So
is there a trend on people who are more upper echelon to be, let's be honest, a prick? I was going to use a C word, but I thought that I'll allow it.
Oh yeah. The bigger the fame, I guess the ego kind of feeds itself. Definitely, and I've seen that. Like a lot of content creators I've followed, they tend to play this role where, okay, I'm in an authoritative position now. You know, I'm making money. I don't want anyone to, mess up my, jig. And so, I see that a lot. But the issue is, how far are they going? If they're still building in success, it's almost as if they're given they're enabled to act a certain way, to act cocky, to reject everyone else's views because they're successful now. It's working for them now. But there's gonna come a point where they're gonna lose traction. Anything that's trending now could lose attention later on. I remember I met KSI in my campus like a few years ago, and he was rude to people. And I know around that time people weren't really feeling him like that. And then he brought himself back up again, changed his character a little bit, and now he's blowing up again worldwide. So in a way, sometimes people are humbled when they realize that they lose and the audience, like if they change their character. But that's what I've seen a lot of the times. It's almost like karma just feeds itself. Like if you change your tune because you've made it, sometimes you might lose that power or influence you've had. It comes back to get you. The Derek Jacksons, the Tommy Sotomayos. Like when you bite too much, it's gonna bite back.
And the thing is, that's why I will say this, because you may mention KSI, and I was going to say this, is especially when it comes to influencers, because there's an incident where, I don't know if you saw, it was kind of trending on Twitter, Patricia Bright, and it was a situation where and this is, social media is like black people's number one enemy, because I don't know why he would post it, but anyway,
God.
For those who don't know, apparently she posted that she got scammed, and the situation went like this. A woman who I think she might have been either not homeless, but she was down on luck, came to Patricia Bright and asked for some money at the time for some food for her and her brothers. And then what Patricia Bright did was, actually, I said, let me take you to shop. So she's going to take her to Marks and Spencer, which obviously, as everyone knows, is quite expensive. But the woman was like, no, let's go to Tesco. So the woman was saying to Patricia Bright, no, let's go to Tesco. So they went to Tesco. Was it Tesco they went to? But anyway, they went to the.
No, she eventually took her to M&S. Yeah.
Okay, I see. I remember Patricia Bright persuaded her to take her to M&S. So they went to M&S.
Forced to it.
And then paid for the food, which she paid contactless, which had to come to like less than £40, whatever it was. But it was just how she entered the story, and just she was laughing about it, saying she got scammed, the condescending nature. And a lot of people, this is not the first instance with Patricia Bright that she's been kind of called out by a lot of black women now for her uppity, let's call her uppity Negro nature. And for influencers, it's a hell of a lot more severe, because the only reason why, let's be fair, these influencers like the Derek Johnson, Tommy Sotomayor's, the KSIs, or where they are, is because of the people who, let's be honest, the followers. She could have been a follower of her. We don't know. I mean, but you know what I mean? It's like, now once you crap on the people who, let's be fair, helped you get to that situation, now you're in deep shit. Whereas it's a slightly bit different for someone like maybe a Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates to a certain extent, because even though they're in the market, it's got a product. Whereas an influencer's product is solely themselves. They have to sell themselves.
Yes.
In terms of the entertainment value. Because their content, let's be honest, a lot of them isn't like it's brand spanking new. Oh my God, this is something we've never heard before. Oh my God. But they're basically subscribing to the influencers. So I like how you said that, but it's a clear distinction. But yeah, I see a lot with influencers where once they get on, once they've got their million subscribers or however many subscribers it takes them to get their head blown up, then they I heard some things about like KSI's one, Patricia Bright's another one. A lot of them have this ego. And
you notice that they always have to clean up. It's almost like they play their own PR team. Like these people need to have PR teams. And so Patricia Bright, when she did that, she made a new video trying to explain exactly what happened and almost sound more sympathetic. That okay, if she posted this video, then people wouldn't take it that way. So she had to clean up her act sometimes, like she forgets it. Money really does make their heads big, and they can't help it at times. And so you're selling your image, and if you forget to, I guess, present yourself in a way to come down to like everyone's level, then people will look at you funny. And so that's what happened with her. Like that, she's a perfect example.
It is, and it does show a lot of things. And this is a live stream I want to have planned in future, and how the UK, even though we have a class system, it's heavily socialist. I'm gonna have to really explain it in terms of its viewpoints, but the UK hates rich people for some reason. It hates them with a passion. Whereas we count rich people's pockets all the time in terms of how much they get paid, especially when it comes to Africa. So a lot of the ire of people like Patricia Bright and those and KSI is because most people, obviously, because of the whole classism, but it's very socialist because most people are working class. Most people are just getting on by. We hate because we see them as they are separate themselves from us, or you've made it here and now you're just shitting on the little people. It's such a socialist society in the UK. It's crazy, even though we're meant to be progressive type. I say mixed economy, but kind of capitalist. But it's it's a stream I kind of wanted to do, but I need to position it right at some point in the future. So
we'll definitely touch on that.
Yeah, I just when it comes to progression in the UK, I feel so stunted because it's such a because if you look at the average wage in the UK, it's actually quite pittance. It's like 29k is the UK average wage. Like really, less than 30k. So there's a lot of socialist agendas, and the NHS is the biggest social agenda, but people love it. So I'm not gonna talk about NHS. I'm not gonna talk about it.
Yeah,
it's a sacred cow. Yeah. It's a sacred cow.
Right, religion.
Oh yeah, good God. But yeah. Big up to everyone who's been on the stream. I appreciate you being here. It's been a wonderful topic. I really wanted just to get this topic out here, just to get all your guys' viewpoints and feelings about the whole topic of mentorship and guidance and that sort of aspect, particularly as us being here in the UK. So with that note, I'm just going to say bid you all a farewell. Have a great, I say evening, but have a good night. And on to the next one. Make sure you like and subscribe if you watch the stream on the playback. And we're out of here.
Yeah, thanks for the shout out, guys. See you later. Thank you.
No worries. See you later, everyone.